I worried the man might stop breathing at any moment. Hope you're still alive next time, I muttered, leaving the gloomy library. Weiss watched me go with a warm, knowing smile. Haha, what was the name of the last sweet-talking sparrow? Oh, right. Back in the main corridor, I pondered my next move. A guard approached, looking urgent. Baron Pendragon, a man named Clark Graham is here. He says he's from the Obsidian territory and has urgent news. Clark? My heart tightened. Why would he leave the Obsidian territory? Was something wrong? Panic surged. Lead the way, I commanded, rushing toward the gate. They hurried through the complex corridors and exited the fortress. The afternoon sun blinded me for a moment before I spotted the familiar figure. Clark Graham stood there, his golden hair shining, still carrying the poise of a royal noble. Clark, I called out, rushing to meet him. Clark waved back with a smile. I scanned Clark and his loyal knight retainers. I suppose if you're going to deliver bad news, you might as well look like you're posing for a portrait while doing it. A bad premonition hit me. What is it, Clark? Is something wrong with the Obsidian territory? Is old John all right? A month in the wilderness had stripped away Clark's vanity, leaving him composed and steady. He shook his head calmly. Obsidian territory is stable and on track. Old John and Brandon are managing well. They sent these letters for you. He handed 2 sealed letters to me, and I tucked them away without reading. I stared at him, pressing. If the territory is fine, then what about you? Or the Graham family? Clark offered a complex, bitter smile. You're as sharp as ever, he sighed. Nothing gets past you. Trying to sound lighthearted, he added, did you know? My grandfather is now the Prime Minister. How about that? I'm the grandson of the Prime Minister. I can finally protect you properly. Ha ha. He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. I saw no mirth in Clark's blue eyes, only deep-seated anxiety. I remained silent, my steady gaze eventually breaking Clark's facade. Clark slumped, his voice dropping. My grandfather sent me encrypted orders. He and the family have been dragged into the capital's political vortex. The situation is dangerous. He ordered me to stay in the West, in Obsidian territory, and not return to the capital. I listened, understanding instantly. Marquis Graham was preparing for the worst, trying to preserve his family line by keeping Clark away from the storm. But, Clark's voice hardened, I can't do that. I smiled knowingly. So, you're sticking to your willful, disobedient child persona? Clark laughed, the tension of their capital days returning. It was nice to know some things never changed, like his talent for picking the worst possible time to be stubborn. He punched my chest. Same to you. But I'm going back. To my family. The Graham family has no cowards. We face whatever comes together. Seeing his friend's resolve, I nodded in support, though I felt a pang of regret. It's a shame. I had something that might have broken your golden rampart to give you once you settled. I meant the moonlight spring, but Clark just laughed it off. Standing tall with the pride of his house, Clark declared, Thanks, brother. But our motto is, my blade remains sharp. Grahams rely only on the blades they sharpen themselves. External help is just that, external. I respected this knightly pride. Fine, I'll keep it for you. I'll hand it to you myself one day. Clark understood the implication. They would meet again, whether he returned safely or I visited the capital. I'll wait. Clark said, moved. They embraced, patting each other's backs firmly. The twins of the capital, who had supported each other through the wilderness, parted ways toward uncertain futures. Clark turned to his knights. Let's go. He mounted his horse, gave me one last nod, and galloped away from Thorn City. I stood alone, watching the golden figures vanish into the dust. I felt a lingering dread about the capital's dangers until a calm voice spoke behind me. Parting is common, Eli Black. I turned to see Lucius standing in the shadows of the side gate. Lucius watched the road with deep, emotionless eyes. Especially for people like us. Loved ones leave, allies betray, and leagues crumble. It is a necessary lesson in life. Don't drown in sentiment. Become strong enough to handle any change, or perhaps, one day, to prevent these forced departures. Life is a constant cultivation. He turned and walked back into the fortress without another word. Lucius really does have a gift for making everything sound like a depressing homework assignment. I remained, pondering the weight of his words. The moment was shattered by Lucius's voice calling from afar. Also Eli. I saw you let such a valuable bargaining chip go. Don't think I'll ignore it. Oh, shaking off my melancholy, I returned to my room in La Roche Fortress. I picked up the book from the archives to distract myself, ignoring Lucius's sarcastic warning. I read through the detailed records of the city-state's history, politics, and military. I marveled at the author's expertise. This was clearly the result of dangerous, first-hand research. I reached the final page. Unlike the rest, this page was artistic. Elegant script read, "We have traveled the city-states and present our findings to Duke Federico Laroche. The Western Federation has grand designs. Beware the threat from the West. Bard Chris Russell and Scholar Estad. Autumn, New Calendar 503. Russell." I frowned. The Duke of the East was a Russell, a family member, accompanied by a scholar from the Midsummer Islands. Crossing the kingdom and the set desert to reach the Western Federation required immense courage. Yet, they hadn't given this intelligence to their own family. They gave it to the Duke of the West, who would face the threat first. I admired their selfless, visionary act. But I remembered finding the book in a dusty, forgotten box. It had been neglected for years. Was it ignored because it came from the Eastern Russell family, triggering the Laroche's suspicion? A knock interrupted me. Ron's loud, excited voice boomed. "Eli, it's me, Ron." I invited him in. Ron entered, beaming, holding several bottles of fine wine. "Good news," I teased. Ron laughed, brimming with pride. "Exactly. I just finished my mission and was summoned by Lord Lucius. As of today, I, Ron Hohenzollern, am a legitimate baron of Runestone City." "Thanks to you, Eli." I shook my head. "Captain Ron. No, Baron Ron now. I suppose I should start charging for the knighthoods. That was your own bravery and merit, which Lord Lucius witnessed. It had nothing to do with me." Ron waved it off. "Regardless, I owe you." I wanted to celebrate, but my uncle already left for the royal capital. "Lord Lucius mentioned you were still at La Roche Castle, so I came straight here." I felt a warmth in my chest. Lucius had actually noticed Eli's potential gloom over his friend's departure and prompted Ron to visit. This unexpected thoughtfulness from the cold Western governor touched me. I set aside my urge to retire the man and smiled, pulling up a chair. "Sit, Baron. But if the wine is bad, I'll be upset." Ron slammed a bottle on the table. "You'll love it. It's a gift from my uncle's cellar." They toasted, and the rich aroma of wine filled the room. Meanwhile, in Storm City, long occupied by the Wanlu Federation, the atmosphere was grim. In a meeting hall blending Western and Wanlu styles, the occupying nobles were in a heated, anxious debate. Lord Paul, a noble with a waterflow mask, addressed the man at the head of the table. "Is the news true? Is the Federation really descending into civil war? Why now, when the Orlando Kingdom is on the brink of chaos?" Another noble slammed the table. "Damn those Hofgard brutes. They only know how to forge and fight. Have they smashed their own brains with their hammers? Starting a civil war now." Paul Botticelli, the highest authority in Storm City, looked weary. "The news is true. My brother in Wanlu used a costly secret transmission to warn me. The great forgers of Hofgard claim a prophecy from the god of forging. They are destined to unify all federations into a single empire." "Unify? Nonsense," the masked noble sneered. "What about the Six Crown Council? Do they think we're decorations?" Paul leaned back, exhausted. He felt a deep sense of resentment. Wanlu is governed by 6 powerful families, the Six Crowns, who control the region's 6 major rivers. The Six Crown Council is the supreme decision-making body. Paul is a member of the Botticelli family. He recalled being handpicked by his father-in-law, the Marshal of the Eastern Expedition, a year ago. As they prepared to leave with their spoils, the conflict remained unresolved. The Marshal coerced and tempted him into taking charge of Storm City. The plan was to exploit the coming Orlando Civil War to conquer the kingdom. Paul, blinded by ambition, stayed behind with troops and resources, as did other Federation forces in occupied cities. Now, the kingdom was indeed falling into chaos, but the Federation was tearing itself apart. The king was dead, the heir was young, and opportunists were rising. It was the perfect chance, ruined by internal strife. Their promised reinforcements were gone, leaving them stranded. Paul rubbed his temples. "Without her and that divine artifact, we cannot cross the set desert to return home." We are staying. We aren't going back. He paused. I've summoned all remaining Federation forces in the west to gather at Storm City. Once they arrive, I will explain the gravity of our situation. He looked up, his expression grave. We may only have one choice left. His subordinates held their breath. Lord Paul, what do you mean? Paul silently pushed a letter across the table. His men read it, their eyes widening in disbelief. Lord Paul, whose letter is this? The masked noble stammered. Paul looked at them, his expression complex. It's hard to look heroic when you're essentially admitting you've started pinballing with the enemy. Bernard, the Minister of Intelligence of the Orlando Kingdom. 2 days later, as night fell in Thorn City, pioneer lords arrived from across the west, summoned by Sir Lucius. They were housed in high-end inns within the inner city. I had moved from La Roche Castle to one of these inns. I knew staying among the other lords would provide better intelligence and maneuverability. Sir Lucius's arrangement was calculated. He grouped the lords by their home regions. Easterners, Southerners, Royal Territory nobles, and a few Northerners were separated into different inns. This encouraged them to form regional cliques and select leaders before the conference. This would simplify negotiations and reveal the allegiances of each faction. The Golden Cup and Antler Inn, housing the Royal Territory nobles, was the loudest. The young nobles, once pampered in the capital, now looked rugged from months in the western wilderness. Their clothes were worn and patched, but their demeanor had changed significantly. They gathered in groups, recounting their harrowing experiences. They discussed those who had perished in the wasteland. I descended the stairs in modest attire, a faint smile on my face. Gentlemen, it has been a long time. The hall quieted, all eyes turning to me. I was a household name among the young royal nobles, formerly as a cautionary tale, now as the only one to earn a baronetcy and achieve significant military merit in the West. Human instinct, especially in the remote West, drew them toward the strong. Seeing me, the nobles flocked to me, eager to build connections. Eli, long time no see. Eli, I knew you were capable. Don't listen to those other guys. Baron Eli, my mother's cousin's husband's brother, married a distant aunt of yours from the Black family. Technically, I'm your nephew. I maintained a gentle smile, mingling effortlessly. I accepted a drink, clinking glasses with both acquaintances and strangers, fueling the lively atmosphere. I occasionally dropped precise, embarrassing anecdotes about the noble's youth in the royal capital, drawing knowing laughter and instantly bridging the social gap. It felt like the old, superficial intimacy of the royal territory. A young knight from the Bernard family seized a gap in conversation to ask cautiously, Baron Eli, why did Sir Lucius suddenly summon all the pioneer lords? Is there a major announcement? Do you have any inside information? Give us a hint. The hall fell silent as everyone turned to me, sharing the same burning curiosity. I set down my glass, looking helpless. Honestly, I know as much as you do. Sir Lucius hasn't told me anything. Seeing their disappointment, I pivoted. However, rest assured, whatever Sir Lucius demands, I, Eli Black, promise to speak up first to protect our collective interests. We must stand united in the western border. My firm stance resonated, winning immediate support. Well said. Baron Eli is a stand-up guy. The hall erupted in cheers, and the self-proclaimed nephew shouted, Since Baron Eli is so capable and responsible, why don't we make him the leader of our Royal Territory Pioneer Lords? Agreed. Support Baron Eli. Leader. The proposal gained instant momentum. I, possessing the best status and reputation, feigned surprise and waved my hands. How can I? You are all talented. The crowd, caught in the fervor, refused to let me decline, their cheers growing louder. Don't refuse, Baron Eli. Who else is worthy? Seeing no escape, I sighed and spoke solemnly. Since you trust me, very well. I, Eli Black, accept this responsibility. I will do my utmost to protect our group's interests. Yes. The hall exploded in cheers. The lords felt they had found their backbone. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door was kicked open with a thunderous crash, silencing the celebration. The Royal Territory lords stared, furious at the intruders who dared to kick their door. A group of arrogant youths with foreign styles stood at the entrance, wearing provocative expressions. Audacious. Who are you? Barbarians. Do you know the rules? A noble recognized their crest and sneered. Insulted as country bumpkins, the Eastern Territory lords retorted, "You're the bumpkins. Most of the kingdom's artists and scholars come from the East. Royal territory parasites. How much of the food you eat is shipped by us?" A vulgar, regional shouting match erupted, thick with hostility. It was like watching a high-stakes debate between toddlers over a shared sandbox. The commotion drew a crowd of other lords and Thorn City residents to watch the spectacle. I, newly minted leader, felt my eye twitch. Asterisk seriously? Perfect timing. I just finished my speech, and you're already here to ruin the moment. Asterisk despite my annoyance, I knew I had to act as the leader. I pushed to the front, staring calmly at the hostile Eastern lords, my gaze locking onto their leader. It was a woman with fiery red hair tied in a sharp ponytail. She was beautiful but cold, wearing Eastern-style hunting gear with a curved blade at her waist. She scanned the chaotic room, her eyes lingering briefly on me before she signaled her companions to quiet down. I did the same. The red-haired woman stepped forward, ignoring everyone else to focus on me. "Eli Black?" she asked coldly. I noted the Russell family crest on her chest. I nodded coolly. "I am. You are a Russell?" She ignored my question, scanned me with icy eyes, and said, "Shall we talk?" I wasn't opposed to communicating with the East, though I suspect their idea of a dialogue involves significantly more stabbing than mine. However, I had just been elected leader. If I gave in now, it would look like weakness. It would demoralize the people who had just pledged their support. "We are ready to fight. Why should the leader surrender first?" I replied flatly, "No." My supporters cheered, feeling vindicated by my strength. The conflict inadvertently solidified the Royal Territory group, uniting them against a common enemy. Camilla Russell frowned, her gray eyes flashing with displeasure. She hadn't expected such a direct refusal. The shouting match escalated again, with hands moving towards sword hilts. The air in the hall grew heavy. A duel seemed imminent. Both I and Camilla were trapped by our own pride. Camilla, from the Duke of the East family, was a high-ranking leader. She wouldn't bow to royal capital parasites. Neither would back down until the local authorities intervened. Several officials in sheriff uniforms, looking anxious, arrived with a squad of Western Guards. They rushed into the Golden Cup and Antler Inn. The lead official, a stern man in his 40s, barked, "What are you doing? If you want to fight, get out of Thorn City. This is the capital of the West, under the LaRoche family. No rowdiness allowed." The guards moved with professional precision. They forced their way between the two groups, physically separating the feuding lords. I exhaled in relief. "Officer, we didn't start this." The Eastern lords kicked the door in. "We were just defending ourselves." Camilla remained cold. "Oh, your people insulted us first." I met her icy gaze without flinching. Silence fell, save for heavy breathing and the crackle of the fireplace. The lead official, William Claude, looked at the standoff, feeling a massive headache coming on. These pioneer lords had unique backgrounds, but they couldn't be allowed to cause trouble in Thorn City. Lucius LaRoche had instructed William Claude to make an example of them to keep the group in check. Rubbing my temples to prevent a brawl, William addressed the ringleaders. "Baron Eli Black and Baroness Camilla Russell, come with me. Everyone else, disperse immediately." Reality, however, saw both factions glaring at each other, refusing to yield. William frowned and pressed the issue. Realizing the stalemate helped no one, I told my followers to continue drinking, dismissing it as a misunderstanding. Camilla followed suit, signaling her Eastern Territory subordinates to leave. Seeing them command their subordinates so easily only deepened William's resentment. Snorting, William led them to a dim, Spartan room in the security office. It was a makeshift holding cell with only 2 hard cots and a table. I frowned at the environment. It was nice to know the local hospitality industry was just as charming as the local politics. William turned to the 2 young barons. Publicly confronting each other and nearly inciting a riot violates Thorn City's security ordinances. This behavior cannot be tolerated among pioneer lords, he added, noting their stoic expressions. Given your noble status and the lack of actual damage, I will forego harsh punishment. However, you will spend half a day here in quiet reflection. I hope you understand. Camilla's expression turned icy as she stared at William. Are you certain you want to do this? She asked, her voice heavy with pressure. William stood his ground. This is the West. We follow Western rules. Besides, Lord Lucius instructed me to keep an eye on you. He added, since you wanted to talk, this quiet room is the perfect place for it. Ignoring their protests, he walked out and ordered the guards, keep them here until noon tomorrow. No interruptions. The guards obeyed, impressed by William's audacity. The door locked, leaving me and Camilla alone in the dark, each claiming a cot. It's amazing how quickly a room becomes a prison when you're forced to share it with someone you despise. Camilla broke the silence with a sneer. Foolish man, relying only on brute strength. I retorted, stupid woman. Camilla cut to the chase. You must know what happened in the royal capital, she said, staring at my silhouette. What did Lucius LaRoche tell you at LaRoche Castle? What is his stance on the capital's situation? Why were we summoned? I closed my eyes, mocking her. Are you always this stupidly direct? Why would I answer you? Are we close? What did you say? Camilla's voice rose, trembling with suppressed rage. Provoked, she launched a sudden attack. I, caught off guard by her temper, barely reacted. My silver initial rank reflexes kicked in. I instinctively dodged. My right hand shot out, grabbing her ankle. Camilla didn't hesitate, swinging her other leg toward my head. I blocked the strike with my left hand. I twisted her ankle, causing her to lose balance. I pinned her to the floor. How dare you? Get off, she hissed, humiliated. She struggled, but my grip was like iron. Pinning her down, I asked, are you calm now? Camilla stopped, chest heaving, glaring at me in the dark. Get off, she spat. Instead, I held her down and smacked her backside. Apologize. Then we can talk. Camilla, stunned and furious, bit down hard on my exposed shoulder. Are you a dog? I will kill you, she vowed. The room descended into a physical stalemate. The guard outside pressed his ear to the door. He heard heavy breathing, thuds, and muffled shouts. Let go. It hurts, you jerk. Get out. Let go. The suggestive sounds made the guard's expression twitch. He lamented the state of the world. These were noble barons who had nearly fought earlier. How did they end up like this? He cursed William's decision to lock a young man and woman together. It was like putting fire to straw. He nervously continued his watch. Finally, the commotion died down, leaving only rustling and ragged breathing. The guard sighed in relief. Inside, I and Camilla had retreated to opposite corners. I rubbed my bleeding shoulder. I hadn't expected her to bite. Camilla sat on her cot, face pale, rubbing her bruised ankle. Beast! Scoundrel, she cursed. I retorted, are you a dog? They turned away, falling into a tense silence. After a long while, I heard a faint, suppressed sound, a sob. I sighed. Even the strongest had their moments of vulnerability. I turned to Camilla and asked, Chris Russell. You know him, right? Camilla stiffened, her sobbing ceasing. After a long silence, she replied coldly, why should I tell you? Then, she added, he is my father's brother, my uncle. Years ago, he abandoned his position as heir to the Duke to become a wandering bard. How do you know that name? I mused that she was a classic tsundere. I felt genuine admiration for Chris Russell, who had voluntarily surrendered his birthright to his younger brother. To abandon the peak of Orlando's power, a dukedom, simply to pursue the freedom of a bard required immense courage and a profound disdain for worldly status. It was no wonder he had the audacity to travel through the Federation's city-states and document his findings. A truly extraordinary man. I replied. I saw it on the title page of a book. He was a co-author. Camilla seized the opening. Fine, I answered. Now it's your turn. Why did Sir Lucius summon us? Do you know something? I remained silent for a moment, finding her line of questioning odd. Oh, when did I agree to trade information? I was just curious about a Russell. As for your question, why should I tell you? Camilla's chest heaved with indignation at my shamelessness. Apparently, she hadn't realized that turnabout is fair play. Since arriving in the West, her status and skill had made her untouchable. She had never been toyed with like this. Recalling the humiliations she'd faced within her own family, she suppressed her anger and turned away. She faced the wall, forcing herself to sleep. I, satisfied with confirming Chris Russell's identity, closed my eyes as well. After an unknown amount of time, the sound of a lock turning and the door creaking open jolted us awake. Blinding sunlight flooded the room. Both squinted, shielding our eyes as we struggled to adjust to the sudden brightness. A guard's voice, respectful yet tinged with amusement, echoed. My lords, your time is up. You may leave. Camilla sat up first, smoothing her disheveled hair and clothes. Glancing at me, she felt a surge of resentment. She walked over, kicked my leg hard, and stormed out without a word. I winced, caught completely off guard by her parting strike. To the guard, Camilla's messy appearance and the retaliatory kick looked suspiciously like a lover's spat. The guard gave me a knowing, suggestive wink, full of admiration. It was a look that suggested he'd watched far too many tavern plays and not enough actual combat. I was left utterly bewildered by the guard's expression. I stretched my stiff limbs and exited the unpleasant cell. The guard bowed, and I left the station. Outside the Golden Cup and Antler Inn, Wolfgang stood like a tower, waiting faithfully. My lord, are you all right? He asked with concern. I waved him off. It was just a small misunderstanding. I was invited for tea and a chat. Wolfgang relaxed and reported. An official from the west arrived. Sir Lucius has ordered a meeting. In 3 days, at noon, all pioneer lords must attend a conference at the Thorn Cathedral. 3 days. I mused. Understood. Meanwhile, at the Eastern Territories Inn, Camilla Russell had changed into clean clothes, her expression as icy as ever. Yet, a flicker of irritation remained in her eyes as her maid reported the news. My lady, Sir Lucius has ordered all pioneer lords to attend a meeting at the Thorn Cathedral in 3 days. Camilla nodded emotionlessly. After a pause, she added, Amber, investigate Baron Lucerne, Eli Pendragon. I want everything, from his birth in the royal territory to now. Be as detailed as possible. Amber sensed the suppressed rage in her mistress's voice. She bowed deeply without questioning. Yes, my lady. I will see to it immediately. 3 days passed in a tense, quiet atmosphere. Today was the day of the assembly. While some remote lords might be late, a significant number had already gathered in Thorn City. Early in the morning, the courtyards of the designated inns were already filling with people. These young lords wore modified travel gear or light leather armor. However, they prominently displayed their family crests. Identifying these was a basic requirement for Orlando nobility, turning the square into a living heraldry exhibit. Beyond the earlier clash between the royal territory and the East, tensions were high. The East and South, historical rivals in trade, had nearly come to blows upon arrival, only stopped by Western officials. The northern lords were few in number. Yet, no one dared provoke them. They were silent, fur-clad, and notoriously fierce. The northerners were known to settle insults with immediate duels. Knock, knock. Wolfgang's steady voice sounded. My lord, it is time. I stood before a full-length mirror, checking my attire. I wore a sophisticated black outfit with intricate silver embroidery on the collar and cuffs. Most striking were the shoulder guards, crafted into the shape of gripping dragon claws. They shimmered with cold metallic light, echoing the Pendragon black dragon emblem. A deep blue velvet cloak hung from my shoulders. The design and color palette perfectly complemented my family crest. It projected both noble status and an understated, powerful authority. I had spent a fortune commissioning this from the LaRoche family's master tailors and armorers for this specific occasion. It's amazing how much more authoritative one feels when wearing a year's worth of taxes. Satisfied, I pushed open the door. Wolfgang's wolf-like eyes widened in genuine admiration. My lord, you look incredibly imposing. I smiled. Let's go. We descended to the bustling lobby. Royal territory lords were eating simple breakfasts of black bread, dried meat, and porridge. Seeing me, they greeted me warmly. Eli. Good morning. Good day, Baron Eli. Leaders, sit here. I responded with a calm, gentle smile. I naturally gravitated toward the table of my nephew, the young noble Velen Vile. Velen, from the royal territories Vile family, was a vassal to the powerful Roman family. Over the past few days, I had found Velen to be a resilient youth. Despite the hardships of the frontier, he maintained an optimistic, sunny disposition. Charismatic and social, he was a natural connector among the royal territory lords. Lord Alliance Leader, you look sharp today. Velen greeted me, gesturing for me to sit. I nodded, accepting a simple meal, then leaned in as Velen whispered, I have a rumor. Something massive happened in the royal capital. The king had an accident. C-7424, Lucius Laroche's emergency summons must be related to this, Velen muttered. Gula's Roman, a stout man nearby, overheard and laughed, slamming his ale mug down. Ha ha, Velen, which bard told you that nonsense? The king had an accident. You might as well say Prime Minister Federico committed treason, or that Lucius is gathering us all here just to execute us. The surrounding lords erupted in laughter, easing the tension. Gulus, how much have you been drinking? Others chided the Roman family heir, known as Barrel Roman, for his physique and love of drink. C-7431. I remained silent, finishing my breakfast calmly. Whatever the news, we will know soon at the cathedral. Stay calm and prepared. My composure settled the group. Shortly after, a Western border official arrived at the inn with guards. Lords, it is time. Please follow me to the cathedral. Leave your personal guards behind. The atmosphere turned stagnant. No guards allowed. Lords exchanged suspicious glances. Was Gulas's joke about being executed actually possible? All eyes turned to me. I stood, adjusted my cloak, and said, "Follow me. Do not worry." Reassured by my calm, the royal territory lords followed me outside, where 3 other groups were already waiting. The Eastern Territory group was the largest, with nearly 50 lords standing loosely. Camilla Russell stood at the front like a thorny red rose. Her cold gaze locked onto me with undisguised disdain. I suppose I should be flattered she's paying me any attention at all. Her maid, Amber, followed her gaze to the white-haired, dignified me. Is that Eli Pendragon? He's so handsome. A beast in human clothing, Camilla scoffed. I ignored her, scanning the southern and northern groups. A young noble led the southern lords, while a tall, cold-faced youth led the northern group. A beast in human clothing, Camilla scoffed. I ignored her, scanning the southern and northern groups. A young noble led the southern lords, while a tall, cold-faced youth led the northern group. The northern group radiated an aura of hostility. The 4 groups, representing the kingdom's frontiers, stood in a tense, subtle atmosphere. William Claude, the Western official, confirmed the head count. Pioneer lords, follow me to the Thorn Cathedral. Pioneer lords, follow me to the Thorn Cathedral. The procession marched along Thorn City's main street. Western soldiers lined the streets like statues. Citizens whispered, "Look at them, noses in the air." Hush, those are powerful pioneer lords. They're dangerous. Pioneer lords? What are they doing in our West? Many lords heard the insults and grew angry. Accustomed to absolute authority, they were unused to such treatment. I suppose being treated like a common nuisance is a fresh experience for them. Yet, under the cold gaze of the Western soldiers, they suppressed their rage. They realized the true authority here belonged to the Laroche family. They soon reached a magnificent structure. The Thorn Cathedral was built of white stone with towering spires and stained glass, featuring the Laroche golden lion crest. Velen whispered, "This looks grander than the Cathedral of Light in the capital." The Thorn Cathedral was built of white stone with towering spires and stained glass, featuring the Laroche golden lion crest. Velen whispered, "This looks grander than the Cathedral of Light in the capital." Connor, a royal territory lord, scoffed, "It's just flashy on the outside. Westerners know nothing of art." Connor, a royal territory lord, scoffed, "It's just flashy on the outside. Westerners know nothing of art." A Western official glared at them. The 2 fell silent instantly. The cathedral doors opened, revealing a vast, empty interior. Connor was proven wrong immediately. I suppose being confidently incorrect is a skill in its own right. The interior was incredibly luxurious, with polished marble floors and gilded columns. The massive dome was the most striking feature. It featured a grand mural of creation and heroic battles. The figures looked ready to step off the walls. I spotted a mysterious dragon in the painting. How did they paint that high up? Someone marveled. This style, it's like Master Lauren's work. Eastern lords began critiquing the art. Eastern lords began critiquing the art. Guided to their seats, the lords sat in regional sections, whispering about Lucius's intentions. Guided to their seats, the lords sat in regional sections, whispering about Lucius's intentions. As Camilla and Amber passed by, she accidentally slammed her shoulder into me. I staggered, my anger rising. As she walked away, I felt a cold resolve. As they crossed, I subtly but firmly slapped her backside. Slap. Camilla froze, spinning around with eyes burning with fury. I turned away, ignoring her, and whispered something to Velan. Amber asked her master, who was blushing, "My lord, what happened?" Camilla seethed with rage, wanting to strike the shameless man down, but she restrained herself due to the public setting. Suppressing her fury, she sat back down. William Claude approached the platform and announced that Lucius LaRoche would arrive shortly. A solemn horn blast echoed through the cathedral. William commanded, "Stand up. Welcome Lord Lucius." The pioneer lords reluctantly rose. Connor, a lord from the royal territory, muttered, "Such arrogance. Acting like the king himself," he complained. Velan elbowed him, whispering, "Quiet. This is the West." The herald announced with great solemnity. The great LaRoche family of the West, brother of Duke Federico, Governor Lucius LaRoche arrives. The cathedral bells tolled across Thorn City. Lucius, clad in golden lion-crested armor, walked to the platform. He glanced at me for a split second before addressing the crowd. "Please, be seated." The room fell into a heavy silence. Lucius asked, "Do you know what has occurred in the royal capital?" The crowd stirred in confusion. He signaled to me, and I knew it was time for our prearranged act. I stood up and asked, "We are ignorant of the news, my lord. What has happened?" Lucius nodded and announced with a grave tone, "Our great king, August Aurora, has been summoned by the gods." He paused to let the shock sink in. It's a classic move. If you're going to deliver bad news, you might as well make everyone wait for it. The hall erupted in disbelief and chaos. Lucius continued, "According to the laws of succession, Prince Aidan will soon be crowned King Aidan I." The herald shouted for silence. The crowd quieted, though they remained visibly shaken. Lucius surveyed the lords. "You know what a change in power means. To ensure your safety and keep you from the capital's vortex, I hereby decree all pioneer lords assigned to the West are forbidden from leaving without my approval until the situation stabilizes. This is for your protection." The crowd protested. "Why are you holding us here?" Outrage flared. Many lords had intended to return home immediately. Lucius remained calm, looking toward me, and I braced myself for the next part of the act. I suddenly stood up and shouted, "I object." The cathedral went dead silent as all eyes turned to me. Camilla smirked, thinking, "What a fool." The silence was eerie. No one else dared to challenge the governor. While others grumbled, they feared being made an example of. They knew that being the first to openly defy authority usually ended in disaster, though I've always been a fan of the dramatic exit. My allies were terrified, trying to pull me back into my seat. "My lord, please sit down. You're challenging Lucius LaRoche." Connor watched in stunned admiration. He couldn't fathom having the courage to speak up like that. Lucius stared at me, seemingly surprised. He asked in a low voice, "Eli Pendragon, do you have an objection?" The room held its breath as I stood tall. "Yes. Your order restricts our freedom. The royal territory lords are especially affected." I gestured to my peers. "Our roots and families are in the capital. We are needed there during this crisis." While other lords felt slighted, the royal territory lords were deeply moved by my defense. They were shocked by my sincerity. "He's actually doing this for us? Is he suicidal?" they wondered. Glass tried to pull me down. "Eli, please apologize to him. We appreciate it, but stop before you get killed." They whispered frantically, but I, sensing the timing was perfect, gave Lucius a subtle nod, a gesture I hoped didn't look like a nervous tic. Lucius suddenly rubbed his temples, his face etched with fatigue and confusion. "Apologies," he said, his voice slowing. "My hearing seems to be failing with age." "Baron Eli, could you repeat what you just said? I didn't quite catch it." The suffocating tension in the room instantly evaporated. Waylon reacted fastest, beaming as he scrambled ahead of me to bow and scrape before Lucius. No, you misheard, Lord Lucius." Baron Eli said nothing. "Absolutely nothing. Please, continue." The other lords from the royal territory caught on immediately, rushing to intervene. They forcibly pulled the standing me back into my seat, pinning me down as if terrified I might jump up again. "I suppose being tackled by your own allies is one way to ensure a peaceful afternoon." I reluctantly sat. Lucius nodded, seemingly satisfied. "I see. My mistake." He scanned the room, lingering on the other lords. Then, "Does anyone have objections to my previous order?" Seeing the royal territory lords silenced, The others dared not speak. The dangerous confrontation ended in a farce. Lucius nodded, satisfied. Good. I am glad you understand my intentions. He then shifted gears, dropping a bombshell. I have one more announcement. The room tensed again. I have decided to begin preparations to reclaim the lost western border. Lucius's voice, though quiet, struck like thunder. This is an unprecedented opportunity for you all. The hall erupted in excited whispers. Reclaiming the lost territories? Storm City and the lands occupied by the Federation? This was a real war, a chance for immense glory and endless spoils. Ambition replaced their earlier frustration. Lucius watched them, pleased. You have been pioneering near these lands for months. You know the situation. The scum of the Western Federation still occupy our cities. Your friends who didn't answer the call. They have likely already been slaughtered by those beasts. The lords' faces twisted with resentment and fear. Many had clearly suffered at the hands of Federation stragglers. Kill them all. Reclaim our cities. The crowd's bloodlust ignited. Lucius fanned the flames. Your participation is vital. Glory is yours for the taking. Barons, viscounts, counts, even marquises may emerge from among you. Titles and fiefs, the ultimate desires of every lord. This was why they came to the western border. A grand war was the fastest path to advancement. Their previous concerns about freedom vanished. For the titles, for the western border, the cathedral roared with fervor. Musicians struck up a stirring, martial anthem, pushing the frenzy to its peak. I sat calmly, unmoved. Having seen real combat, I knew the blood and sacrifice hidden behind these promises. Yet, I had to admire Lucius's mastery of manipulation. With a mix of carrots and sticks, Lucius had them in his palm. As the meeting broke up, Lucius kept the 4 regional leaders. Me, Royal Territory, Camilla, Eastern, Ruff, Northern, and Luca, Southern. Lucius's tone softened. Don't be alarmed. I only kept you to ensure a smooth transition. Return to your regions and stabilize your lords. Answer their questions. He outlined his plan. I will advance on 3 fronts. Luca, you will coordinate the center. Camilla and Ruff, you will assist the northern front. Baron Eli, you will assist the south. Don't be pressured. The Western Border Army will be the vanguard. You and your private troops are support and shock forces. Your primary duty is to act as the bridge between my army and the pioneer lords. Ensure orders are followed and coordination is seamless. The 4 bowed. As you command. They left the cathedral, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. Ruff and Luca departed quickly. They needed to digest the news and plan their next moves. As I prepared to leave, Camilla blocked my path. Her gray eyes burned with complex, turbulent emotions. I frowned. Baroness Camilla, is there something else? A cold, twisted smile curled her lips. I've changed my mind. Killing you is too easy. I'll keep you alive, make you my slave, and force you to lick my boots. Ha ha ha. She flushed with a disturbing, feverish intensity. It's always nice to know exactly where you stand with someone. She turned and walked away with arrogant grace. Her red ponytail swung in the air. I watched her, brow furrowed. Was she insane? What a bizarre fetish. Crazy woman. Shaking my head, I returned to the Golden Cup and Antler Inn. The Royal Territory lords were still buzzing with excitement. They swarmed me upon my arrival. I relayed Lucius's plan for the 3 fronts. When I mentioned the Royal Territory would likely be assigned to the south under my coordination, the southern lords cheered. Great. We get to fight alongside our leader. After answering their questions, I excused myself. I cared little for this false fervor. My heart was back in the Obsidian Territory. I took Wolfgang to the gates of La Roche Fortress. The guards, recognizing the young baron favored by Lucius, bowed. Baron Pendragon. Good day. Please, enter. I nodded and led Wolfgang through the familiar, winding corridors. I reached the study door. My task in Thorn City was done. It was time to return to the Obsidian Territory. I knocked. Enter, came Lucius's voice. I signaled Wolfgang to wait outside and stepped in. Sir Lucius LaRoche sat behind his massive desk, perpetually buried in endless paperwork. It's a wonder he hasn't been suffocated by a rogue stack of ledgers yet. Without looking up, he addressed me, as I had come to announce my departure for the Obsidian Territory. Lucius paused, then offered rare praise. You handled the situation well. He invited me to dinner with him and Lynn Aurora that evening. I accepted, already plotting how to sneak into Lynn's room later. Lucius then shifted to business, noting that the main pressure of the reconquest would fall on the Central Front, specifically Storm City. Consequently, Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern and the bulk of the Western Border's main forces would be deployed to the center. He turned to me, adding, "As for the Southern Front, the focus will be Kyle City and Emerald City further south. The enemy is concentrated but weak there, though the terrain is complex. I intend to entrust the Southern Front to you and Baron Ron Hohenzollern. What are your thoughts? Do you require an experienced general to assist you?" I was moved. Lucius was not only entrusting me with a vital mission, but also sharing sensitive intelligence. By asking for my input on command, Lucius was clearly treating me as a trusted confidant. "If you keep trusting me like this, I'll end up wanting to take care of you in your old age," I thought, though I maintained a respectful facade. I softened my tone, replying, "I will follow your arrangements, my lord. I am honored by your trust, despite my lack of seniority." Regarding command, Baron Ron and I worked together during the Battle of Runestone City. We have a solid rapport. If you have no better candidate, I believe we and the Western Border troops are sufficient for the Southern Front. Lucius smiled, satisfied. "Ron will relay the strategy to you. The specifics are in your hands." He waved me away. I bowed and turned to leave. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, I paused, waiting. Lucius's voice came from behind, sounding almost like an afterthought. "By the way," I turned, feigning confusion. Lucius gestured toward a mahogany cabinet. "You seem to like tea. Take that tin of green leaf morning dew from the cabinet. It's decent." I froze, stunned by the gesture. Apparently, my reputation for being a tea-obsessed mercenary had finally reached the inner sanctum. I looked at Lucius, who had already returned to his documents as if the matter were trivial. I walked to the cabinet and opened it, revealing the ceramic tea tin. I took a clean white porcelain cup, carefully measured a pinch of tea, and placed it inside. I poured hot water from a silver kettle at the perfect temperature. After brewing, I tucked the full tin into my coat pocket. I placed the steaming cup of tea on the corner of Lucius's desk. I bowed deeply to the seemingly preoccupied Lucius. I exited the room in silence. Inside, Lucius stopped writing, his gaze fixed on the tea. He watched it for a moment, his eyes softening. He took a sip, finding it mellow and fragrant. You've improved," he murmured. Actually, I brewed it exactly the same way as last time." Outside, Wolfgang followed me. Seeing the sun setting, I realized I had time before dinner. Recalling that young Duke Constantine was likely training, I headed to the training grounds. I found the boy sweating profusely, practicing archery with intense focus. The old butler stood by, showering him with praise. "A perfect shot. Your Grace, you are truly gifted. In time, you will surpass every archer in the kingdom, even your uncle and Baron Eli." I called out from the corridor, "Hey, didn't I tell you to relax your shoulders and arms?" Constantine jumped, then beamed with joy upon seeing me, waving me over. I entered the training ground with Wolfgang. At dinner, the atmosphere in the small dining room was warm. Lucius sat at the head, with Constantine on his left, Lynn on his right, and I opposite him. Lucius, for once, set aside his official duties, watching his nephew and grandniece with a softened expression. Seeing Lynn's happiness, Lucius ordered the butler, "Bring the golden sunset my brother kept. Tonight calls for a celebration." The butler smiled. "As you wish, sir. That is the Duke's favorite." The butler returned with an aged jar. I took it, noting its weight and chill. Lucius laughed. "You're in for a treat. This was aged for over 20 years. It's from the best vintage of the Midsummer Islands." Constantine begged for a taste, and Lucius allowed him a small half-cup. I opened the seal, the rich aroma filling the room as I poured. Lynn raised her glass, smiling. "Uncle, let's toast. To us being together." I and Constantine joined in. Lucius, touched, clinked his glass against theirs. "Cheers," they cried. The dinner reached its peak in warmth and camaraderie. By the end, Lucius had drunk a bit too much, his face flushed. His eyes were unfocused, and his gait unsteady as he rose. The butler supported him, whispering, "Sir Lucius has a low tolerance for alcohol. Please excuse him." Constantine giggled at his uncle's uncharacteristic state. I suppressed a laugh and excused myself. I walked Lynn to her room and whispered, "Don't lock your door tonight. I'll come by later." Lynn blushed, pouting, "I will lock it. I'm not waiting for you." She slipped inside and slammed the door. I chuckled and returned to my guest room. Remembering I needed to return a book, I grabbed the detailed guide to the Western Federation and headed toward the library. The halls were quiet, save for my footsteps. At the library entrance, the gaunt, hooded librarian, Talilar Samir, sat in his usual chair, looking up as I approached, looking exactly like a man who hadn't seen sunlight since the previous century. I approached, and the old man chuckled. "Huh, a little sparrow. Out reading so late. A truly diligent sparrow. Ha." I placed my book on the table, listening to the man's labored, wheezing breath. "I'm returning this. You should talk less. It sounds exhausting." Weiss only laughed harder. Don't worry. I might, outlive you yet, I twitched, choosing not to argue with the eccentric elder. I asked, "Weiss, you've been here a long time. Do you know if Chris Russell left behind any other works?" Weiss's clouded eyes flickered in the candlelight. I tilted my head, searching my distant memories before slowly nodding. There is one, a small notebook, kept, Struggling for air, he gestured for me to come closer, pointing to his own back. "Carry me. I can't walk, I was thrilled there was another book, but found the request absurd. I'm a researcher, not a pack mule. Seeing the frail old man, I sighed and crouched down. "Fine, hold on tight." Weiss climbed onto my back with a triumphant wheeze. I stood up, shocked by how light the man was. He felt like a bundle of dry firewood. "Where to?" I asked. "Inside, left, forward, second intersection right, the back shelf, top level." Weiss directed me through the labyrinthine library. At the back corner, Weiss reached out, steadying himself by gripping my hair, and pointed to the top shelf. There, the black-covered booklet. I stood on my toes and carefully retrieved it. I read the title, Traveler's Song. I assumed it was a record of my travels. I carried Weiss back to the entrance and set him down. The old man seemed unusually happy, his mouth fixed in a grin. I assumed the man was simply lonely. Ahem. I held up the booklet. "Weiss, I won't register this one. I'll borrow it and return it next time I'm in Thorn." Weiss waved a withered hand, signaling his consent. As I left, Weiss watched me with a strange light in his eyes. May the forest protect you, child." I didn't return to my room immediately. Checking that the coast was clear, I slipped silently into Lynn Aurora's unlocked room. Morning sunlight soon bathed Thorn City. I, Wolfgang Frostclaw, and the Black Raven Knights stood ready at the gates of La Roche Fortress. As we prepared to depart, I looked up at a balcony where Lucius LaRoche stood. Lucius looked composed and stern, as if the drunken elder from the night before had been a mere hallucination. I waved enthusiastically. "Sir Lucius, thank you for your hospitality." Lucius hesitated, then gave a small, reluctant wave. He watched until my party vanished at the end of the street. A complex, unfamiliar emotion washed over him. He suddenly remembered his mother, a woman obsessed with ancient divination. She had used him as a subject for her studies of the stars and fate. Once, looking into a crystal ball, she had stroked his hair and said, "Lucius, my child, the gods tell me you will have a son to be proud of, and you will make me proud too." Her passion for divination faded, and the prophecy was forgotten. The prophecy was technically wrong. Lucius never married, but watching me depart, he felt a strange, burgeoning sense of concern and expectation, like that of a father for a traveling son. Why think of this now? Lucius stared into the distance, silent. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the thought. I really am getting old. Royal capital Orlandia. After traveling day and night, the Western delegation arrived at the ancient capital. Marquis Marcus Hohenzollern and Marquis Claude did not rest. After settling the other nobles in the inn prepared by Federico LaRoche, they took their personal guard straight to the Royal Capital Guard headquarters to meet Marquis Toscana Fernando. The three powerful Western marquises exchanged a silent look and headed for the palace. The palace atmosphere had shifted, the number of patrols had tripled. The guards were no longer the flashy palace types, but battle-hardened elites. Their armor bore the crests of Western families. The Western Border Army now controlled the palace security. Thanks to Toscana, they passed through the checkpoints quickly. They reached the regent's office, guarded by 8 golden lion knights standing like statues. The captain recognized the 3 marquises immediately. He saluted and announced them. Regent, Marquis Toscana, Marquis Claude, and Marquis Hohenzollern request an audience. A deep voice replied from within, Enter. The captain opened the heavy oak doors and gestured for the 3 to enter. Marcus, Claude, and Toscana entered the office, finding it piled high with documents. Behind the desk sat the Duke of the West, the kingdom's regent. Upon seeing me, Marcus and Claude paused, exchanging shocked glances. It's always nice to know my current state of decomposition is so striking. The man before them was a shadow of the energetic, imposing guardian they remembered. I had aged a decade in a mere blink. My once meticulous silver hair was disheveled, my eyes sunken, and my face etched with deep, knife-like wrinkles. My sharp, lion-like eyes were bloodshot and heavy with exhaustion. I was bearing the weight of the entire kingdom alone. I looked up at my old subordinates from the West, a flicker of nostalgia in my gaze. Age, it seemed, made one prone to dwelling on the past. Greetings, Regent. The 3 marquises bowed, hands over their hearts. I waved them off. No need for formalities. As they straightened, Claude, seeing my fatigue, urged me to delegate more work. I shook my head, cutting him off. Tell me of the West, I asked, turning to Marcus and Claude. Though I trusted Lucius, the West was my home. Marcus swallowed his advice. The West is stable, my lord. Sir Lucius has settled the refugees and maintained order. Thorn City retains firm control. There is no unrest. He added, thanks to your and Lucius's efforts, we've attracted many pioneer lords and investors, steadily increasing tax revenue. I nodded silently. Marcus continued firmly. Regarding the military, the Thorn defense line is reinforced and ironclad. It will not repeat the past. Marcus, Claude warned in a low voice. Marcus froze, realizing his slip. The fall of Storm City was a shared scar, and mentioning it before me was like reopening a wound. He coughed awkwardly and pivoted. Right, my lord, there is one more thing. Sir Lucius thinks highly of a pioneer lord named Eli Black. He even intends to arrange a marriage between him and the LaRoche family. My interest was piqued. Lucius mentioned this. Claude, hearing this for the first time, looked surprised. He finally understood why Lucius had introduced that young baron to him in Thorn City. Toscana, who had been silent, interjected. Eli Black? Isn't he the son of Marquis Leon Black from the royal territory? The same, Marcus confirmed. He's capable. He secured the wasteland, took Lucerne City, and recently helped Ron suppress Sabuta Medici's rebellion in Runestone City. I looked relieved. With Lucius there, I am at ease. Keep following his lead. Yes, my lord. Marcus stepped forward, excited. My lord, the most important matter. Sir Lucius is planning to retake Storm City. I remained calm. Lucius has already briefed me on his plans. I have weighed the pros and cons. We cannot delay. We must reclaim the initiative and rebuild the defense line. I looked at Marcus. You will assist Lucius. Use the Western troops and resources. As for the kingdom, I paused. I will raise this at the next council, but don't expect much military support. The internal situation is too unstable. It's a miracle they can even agree on the color of the napkins at these meetings. I will, however, fight for grain and equipment. Marcus struck his chest. That is enough. With your word, we will drive those Federation scum back to the desert. If not for the past. His voice turned bitter. If not for them, Storm City wouldn't have fallen so easily. Claude sighed, his face filled with humiliation. The fall of Storm City was a disgrace to all Western nobles. In its 1,000-year history, it had only fallen once before, to Caesar Aurora. Now, it had happened a second time under their watch. Everyone knew the primary cause wasn't just the lack of troops. It was the internal rot of the kingdom. I fell silent, the atmosphere heavy with my own self-reproach. Toscana broke the tension. My lord, have there been any leads on the king's assassination? My expression darkened. I tried to dismiss Bernard, the Minister of Intelligence, for his failure. But he submitted a report claiming a breakthrough after interrogating Vilas Montauban. Vilas confessed that his father, Cons, was the regicide. Cons intended to poison both me and the king, frame me, and then seize Prince Aidan to control the throne. What? How dare he? The marquises were shocked by the depth of the treachery. Claude frowned. My lord, if the goal was both of you, why only the king? Khans is a cunning fox. He wouldn't make such a mistake. Bernard claims he interrogated the king's cupbearer, Velik Montauban. Velik confessed to poisoning only the largest jar of wine. But Khans accidentally gave that jar to the king. So I survived. It sounded convenient, almost forced. My lord, that is too coincidental. Where's the cupbearer? Let me interrogate him. I shook my head. Bernard reported that Velik committed suicide in his cell yesterday. Dead. Marcus was furious. That's a cover-up. Let me interrogate Khans. He won't speak, Toscana said grimly. My lord, it seems that Minister Bernard is likely involved. Federico nodded, confirming that Bernard had indeed been in secret contact with the Eastern Territory. Marquis Marcus and Marquis Toscana were both incensed by the news. The Russell family again? Are they behind the king's death as well as the queen's? Federico's silence served as his grim confirmation. Marquis Toscana clenched his fists, his fury palpable. The Eastern Territory. They are the masterminds behind it all. Federico raised a hand to silence him. Tos, calm down. Now is not the time for a purge. Aiden is young, and the kingdom needs stability, not internal strife. We must wait. He slumped back, his face etched with the exhaustion of a man bearing an impossible burden. I had returned to the capital fueled by vengeance, intending to cleanse the court with iron and blood. Yet, upon seizing true power, I found my reality shifted. My greatest enemies were no longer battlefield foes, but the suffocating mire of politics and endless compromise. The irony of my situation was bitter. I traded the battlefield for a desk, and somehow, the paperwork felt more lethal. An eye for an eye was a naive sentiment. If only the world were so simple. I often dreamed of abandoning this nauseating web of schemes to return to the western border, to my brothers and the lands I knew. But the memory of my daughter and the sight of my grandson, Aiden, kept me anchored. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, breaking the heavy silence as I looked at my 3 loyal subordinates, who were currently doing an excellent impression of statues. My tone hardened, as much to convince myself as them. Rest assured, the Orlando kingdom stands, and the sun will rise tomorrow. I will handle this. I gazed up at the golden, jewel-encrusted Orlando sun emblem on the wall. Sunlight filtered through the high windows, striking the emblem with a cold, brilliant glare. I will not let this sun set on my watch, I whispered. The 3 marquises watched the aging man, their hearts heavy. They felt a mix of respect, concern, and profound sorrow. Without another word, they saluted and retreated from the office. As the heavy oak doors closed, the afternoon sun outside failed to dispel the gloom hanging over them. Marquis Toscana sighed heavily. You saw him, the Duke is fading. His unspoken worry was clear. Federico's deteriorating state deeply unsettled them. I have business at the Security Bureau, Toscana said to Marcus and Claude. I'll need a drink later. The others nodded grimly, their initial optimism upon arriving in the capital shattered by the reality of the situation. Meanwhile, in the royal bedchamber, 9-year-old King Aiden Aurora sat in a chair far too large for him. Pale and hollow-eyed, he struggled with the trauma of his father's death and his grandfather's suffocating control. The child's psyche was fracturing, manifesting in erratic outbursts. Minister of Intelligence Bernard stood nearby, feigning deep concern. Your Majesty, you are the supreme ruler of Orlando, Bernard whispered seductively. You should do as you please. No one can deny your birthright. Aiden's eyes lit up. I am the king. Except, Bernard added, feigning hesitation. Except what? Aiden snapped, feeling insulted. Except for your grandfather, the regent, Federico, Bernard said carefully. As regent, his influence is absolute. You are forced to follow his lead. Aiden stiffened. Grandfather does it for me. For the kingdom. Bernard wore a look of pity. Forgive me, sire, but have you ever presided over a single council meeting? You have no power. The regent holds it all. He leaned in, lowering his voice. The capital whispers that you are merely a puppet. The regent is the true ruler. Aiden leaped up, his face flushed with rage. A puppet? Who says that? I'll have them all hanged. Bernard hid his satisfaction behind a mask of sorrow. The regent clearly does not believe you are fit to rule. Perhaps he favors another heir of the Aurora and LaRoche bloodlines. Aiden froze, his sister Lynn's image flashing in his mind. The fear of abandonment seized him. Lynn? No. I am the king, he sobbed, curling into a ball. I've seen more dignified displays from a toddler who dropped his ice cream. Bernard let the poison of suspicion fester in the boy's mind. He glanced at the window. Your Majesty, the time is near. Federico's control is too tight. I may not be able to visit you much longer. He bowed, turning to leave. No, Bernard, don't go. Aiden lunged, grabbing his sleeve. Help me. You're the only one who tells me the truth. Bernard stopped, a faint smile touching his lips. He knelt, taking the boy's hand. Your will is my mission, Your Majesty. Days passed in a state of simmering tension. As the coronation of Aiden I approached, the Great Council was set to convene. However, the Dukes of the North, East, and South all sent excuses, refusing to attend in person. They sent only minor family representatives instead. This blatant disrespect was a cold slap to those hoping for unity. Federico and Prime Minister Rein were furious but paralyzed. They were holding a crumbling ship together and could not afford to provoke the powerful dukes. The capital waited in a deathly silence, like the calm before a storm. Though the citizens of Orlandia didn't know the specifics, they sensed the oppression and retreated into their homes. The city felt as if it were trapped beneath an invisible, suffocating web. Everyone waited in silence for the Great Council, a gathering destined to be anything but peaceful, as they braced for their unknown fate. The day of the Great Council arrived. Nobles from all 5 territories of the Orlando Kingdom gathered in unprecedented numbers in the square before the Great Council Hall in the capital, Orlandia. This ancient, grand structure was only opened when the kingdom faced major decisions requiring the collective counsel of the nobility. The official coronation of the new king was undoubtedly the most critical of these matters. Sunlight glinted off colorful family crests and luxurious attire, yet it failed to dispel the pervasive air of hypocrisy. Nobles from different regions formed 5 loose groups, maintaining polite, calculated distances from one another. They wore practiced smiles, engaging in hollow pleasantries with neighbors, creating a noisy, discordant hum. Well, if it isn't Marquis Bourbon? It's been a while. I hear your business in the South is booming. Count Carls, what a coincidence. How have you been? And Don Russell? The gems of the East still shine as brightly as ever. These greetings were merely masks for probing, comparison, and insincerity. Every eye darted around, assessing potential allies and rivals while calculating gains and losses. This was the kingdom's ruling class, stripping away the grandeur of the ceremony to reveal their true, naked nature. As the clamor peaked, the deep, resonant tolling of the council hall's bell silenced the crowd instantly. Everyone reflexively stopped talking, turning their gaze toward the main entrance, which was carved with the kingdom's blazing sun emblem. The heavy doors creaked open, and 2 elderly men emerged, flanked by palace guards. Leading them was the regent, Federico LaRoche, Duke of the West. He wore a solemn black suit with a dark cloak embroidered with a golden lion, followed by the Prime Minister, Rein Graham. Rein looked equally grave, clutching a thick scroll representing the kingdom's laws. The nobles recognized the 2 most powerful men in the realm. The crowd bowed immediately, voices rising in a chorus. Greetings, Regent. Prime Minister Rein. Federico scanned the varied expressions of the nobles, sighing silently to himself. The kingdom's unity was a fragile illusion, yet he had to maintain it. He raised a hand for silence and addressed the crowd. We gather today for a matter of great importance to our future. Witness the coronation of His Majesty, Aiden Aurora, and offer your sacred oaths of loyalty to our great king. He paused, his sharp gaze sweeping the hall. This is not merely a ritual. It is a display of our unity and stability. Remember your responsibilities and honor as nobles. You may now enter. The interior of the hall was vast, with tiered, circular seating designed to accommodate every titled noble in the kingdom. Nobles from the 5 territories were guided to their designated sections. Soon, majestic music drowned out the whispers, and all eyes turned toward the entrance beside the dais. An attendant announced, His Majesty, King Aiden I of the Orlando Kingdom, has arrived, guided by 2 palace servants, a small, thin figure stepped out. Aiden wore a custom-made royal robe, intricately embroidered with golden sun motifs. His eyes betrayed a hint of nervousness as he walked toward the high platform. Seeing his frail, youthful frame, the nobles reacted with a mix of pity, concern, disdain, and disappointment. It was like watching a toddler try to steer a sinking ship. They were about to witness the unprecedented coronation of a 9-year-old boy. As Aiden reached the throne, the tension was palpable. Nobles from the west led the cheer. "Long live King Aiden." It was a signal. The rest followed suit, shouting the same, regardless of their private thoughts. Aiden stood on the dais, his pale face flushing with an unnatural warmth. The roar of the crowd and the illusion of power made him feel dizzy. Prime Minister Ryan stepped forward, unfolding the lengthy decree. Following the tragic passing of the late King August Aurora, the kingdom must move forward. According to ancient law and the royal line of succession, Aiden Aurora, the rightful heir of the great Caesar Aurora, is hereby crowned King Aiden I of the Orlando Kingdom. The hall erupted in performative cheers. Everyone played their part as an actor, cheering not for the child, but for their own survival and interests. Ryan paused, then continued in a booming voice. "I now call upon the regent, Federico LaRoche, Duke of the West and Guardian of the West, to crown His Majesty, Aiden I, with the crown of sovereignty." The applause intensified. The Western contingent cheered with genuine fervor, showing their support for their leader. Aiden, hearing the roar, frowned slightly. Bernard's words echoed in his mind. "You are merely a puppet king. The regent is the true ruler." Federico solemnly lifted the heavy, ancient crown, the symbol of supreme authority. He climbed the steps to stand before Aiden. He held the crown up for the nobles to see before slowly placing it on Aiden's head. However, the crown, designed for an adult, was far too large for the 9-year-old. It sat precariously, nearly covering his eyes. Aiden instinctively reached up to steady it. The nobles witnessed this, and a wave of whispers, filled with mockery, pity, and resignation, rippled through the hall. Federico sighed internally but remained composed, leaning down behind Aiden. "It's hard to look like a sovereign when you're effectively wearing a gold-plated bucket. I will hold the crown from behind, Aiden. Now, open your arms and accept the cheers of your subjects." Aiden obeyed his grandfather's command. He let go of the crown and stiffly spread his arms in a gesture of embrace. With Federico's steady hand, the crown stopped wobbling. The crowd cheered again. Aiden looked out at the faces shouting his name, forcing a smile. A twisted sense of satisfaction filled his heart. Look, they are all bowing to me. I am truly the king now. The coronation concluded, and Ryan continued. Now, the dukes of the 3 territories shall offer their oaths of loyalty. Since the 3 dukes were absent, their highest-ranking family representatives stepped forward. They did not ascend the dais but knelt at its base, facing Aiden. "We, the representatives of the North, South, and East, swear to the great King Aiden I that we shall uphold our duties, follow the laws of the kingdom, and offer our loyalty in the names of our ancestors." Their oaths were fluent and standard, devoid of genuine emotion, sounding like a mere procedural requirement. Once the representatives finished, Ryan's voice rang out again. "Now, all nobles of the 5 territories, offer your oaths of loyalty to His Majesty, Aiden I." The entire hall rose as one. The crowd knelt as one, a vast, solemn sea of people. "We, family name, pledge our oath and loyalty to His Majesty, Aiden Aurora I." Hundreds of voices merged into a thunderous roar, striking the dais and echoing in Aiden's ears. His chest heaved, his face flushed with overwhelming excitement. The sensation of looking down upon the masses was intoxicating. He was lost in the illusion of absolute power. Yet, he suddenly performed an unexpected action. He tilted his head toward his grandfather, Federico, who was still holding the crown behind him. "Grandfather, what about you?" His voice was soft, yet it carried clearly through the brief silence following the nobles' oaths. Many nobles looked up, faces etched with shock and disbelief. Even Prime Minister Ryan and the 3 territorial representatives shifted in their seats. To ask such a question at such a solemn moment, he truly was just a child. I suppose expecting a sense of occasion from a boy who still gets excited by shiny hats was asking too much. Federico's hand remained rock-steady on the crown. He looked calmly at his grandson and declared, I, the LaRoche family, in the name of the Duke of the West and all vassals, swear our loyalty to His Majesty, Aiden Aurora I, by the honor of our ancestors. His steady voice instantly quelled the ripple of unease, stabilizing the scene. Hearing his grandfather's oath, Aiden's last shred of doubt vanished. It was replaced by an inflated sense of satisfaction and power. He turned back, a bright, smug smile on his face, scanning the crowd again. Below, the kingdom's nobles remained prostrate. On the dais, he stood alone. I am the king, he repeated internally, as if to cement it as an immutable fact. It's a bold strategy to base your entire identity on a title you've held for roughly 5 minutes. He did not realize that many of the faces bowed below him now wore expressions far more complex and deep. A day after the coronation, in the regent's office, Federico listened to an urgent report from Bernard, the Minister of Intelligence. Regent, my best spy reports abnormal troop movements and supply gathering among the Federation remnants in Storm City. They seem to be plotting something. I rushed here immediately to report, fearing any delay. Federico frowned. Federation remnants? What is the scale? Is the Western Federation Alliance coordinating with them? This was his primary concern. The West could not withstand another large-scale invasion. Bernard replied quickly, My lord, our investigations confirm that the Western Federation Alliance is currently embroiled in internal strife, leaving them no time for external aggression. You need not worry about a large-scale attack. These remnants are merely rootless stragglers. I believe Lucius and the Western Border Army can handle them easily. Relieved, Federico said, Good. Inform Lucius to remain vigilant. You have done well, Bernard. Bernard beamed. Thank you, my lord. It is for the safety of the kingdom. Federico paused, his gaze sharpening. Bernard, I recall, you are from the east? Bernard lowered his head further. Yes, my lord. I am from a poor island called Leia. My father was a humble fisherman. I only escaped that life because the Russell family recognized me and gave me a minor post. I am but a commoner's son, serving the kingdom by divine grace. Federico ignored the nuance. Leia? Tell me, Bernard, to whom are you loyal? The Duke of Russell in the east, or this kingdom? Bernard looked terrified, nearly prostrating himself. My lord, please understand. Though I am from the east, I hold this position only through your trust. The Russell family merely gave me a start. They cannot compare to the kingdom's cause or your patronage. I am loyal only to the Orlando kingdom and to you, Regent. If I speak a lie, may my soul be damned. He trembled. Federico watched him for a long time before shifting the topic. The South and East have long-standing grievances, do they not? Bernard replied cautiously. Yes, my lord. They have been enemies for centuries over trade routes and ports. I see. Federico made a decision. Bernard, I am here. I have a secret mission for you. If successful, you will be one of the kingdom's greatest heroes. I am at your command, my lord. I am appointing you as a special envoy to secretly visit the South with Marquis Claude. Your task is to persuade Duke Harkson of the South. Ensure he stands firmly with the kingdom, and with me, in future events. Tell him that once the Russell family falls, all their coveted trade routes and ports, and even parts of the Eastern Territory, can be divided and given to the South as a reward for his support. Federico leaned forward, offering the final promise. If you succeed, Bernard, that island of Leia is too small for you. Count, Marquis, or even Duke. The kingdom does not skimp on rewarding true loyalty. The promise hit Bernard like a hammer. I suppose the sound of a title hitting someone is always a bit deafening. He gasped, stunned by the sudden prospect of immense wealth. Then, ecstasy and ambition flooded him. I will serve you to the death, my lord. Federico nodded. A guard announced, My lord, the royal council is waiting. Federico stood, adjusting his robes, and told the still-flushed Bernard, Come with me to the royal council. Yes, Regent. Bernard followed him closely. The atmosphere in the royal council chamber was solemn. Prime Minister Rhine, the ministers of finance, civil affairs, and maritime affairs, and the captain of the Royal Capital Guard were already seated. They stood as Federico entered. "Good day, Regent." Federico took his seat. "Please be seated. Let us begin." The meeting proceeded with reports on taxes, public works, and security. Federico listened intently, offering clear directives. Bernard sat at the end of the table, trying to remain inconspicuous. It's a bold strategy for a man who looks like he's trying to hide a giraffe in a closet. However, as the Minister of Civil Affairs reported on refugees, a commotion erupted outside. "Your Majesty, the ministers are in session. You cannot." "Insolent. I am the king. Where can I not go? Get out of my way." The door was kicked open. 9-year-old King Aiden Aurora I stormed in, face flushed with anger. Aiden met Federico's calm gaze and felt a flicker of fear. But, emboldened by his royal authority, he puffed out his chest. "Grandfather, I am the king. I shall participate in the council." Federico looked at the silent ministers, then stood slowly. "Of course. Please, take your seat, Your Majesty." Aiden, surprised by the easy compliance, walked in triumphantly. Bernard quickly moved a heavy chair to sit beside Federico's seat. Federico gestured for Aiden to take the main seat while he sat in the new one. Aiden felt a surge of pride as his grandfather yielded the throne. I scrambled into the oversized chair, attempting to mimic Federico's stern posture. "Proceed," Aiden commanded. The Minister of Civil Affairs hesitated, looking to Federico for confirmation before continuing his report with visible nervousness. Federico provided clear instructions as if the interruption had never occurred. Federico then scanned the ministers and introduced a major topic. The western border intends to reclaim Storm City and other lost territories from the Federation. The chamber fell into a stunned silence. War in the regent's power base? The ministers exchanged uneasy glances, afraid to speak. The kingdom's current finances could not support a major conflict. Under the gaze of Prime Minister Rhine, the Minister of Civil Affairs stood up tremulously. "Regent, reclaiming lost land is indeed a priority. However, the treasury is empty and the land is suffering. Large-scale mobilization would be." Federico interrupted, preempting their fears. "The Western Border Army will lead the campaign, and the West will cover the majority of the costs. The kingdom only needs to provide surplus weapons and grain. This will not strain the royal territory or the treasury." The ministers breathed a collective sigh of relief. Seeing no personal cost, they were happy to offer their support. Earl Bellin, the Minister of Finance, immediately agreed. "In that case, it is feasible. The kingdom should support our soldiers." The room erupted in sycophantic agreement, praising the regent's foresight. Federico nodded. "Then it is decided. Prime Minister Rhine, coordinate the logistics with the Minister of Finance." Rhine accepted the order. Aiden watched the ministers fawn over his grandfather. Realizing they were ignoring me entirely, my pride vanished, replaced by confusion. It's impressive how quickly a room full of people can pretend I'm just a piece of furniture. As the meeting concluded, the ministers rose. They bowed to both the regent and the dazed king. As they exited, Prime Minister Rhine lingered to whisper to Federico, "The trial by combat against Khans Montauban is this afternoon at the old arena. Do not worry, I will not fight him." Federico thanked him, and Rhine departed with a final blessing. The hall emptied, leaving only Aiden and Federico. Aiden had remained silent since his opening remark. I sat like a hollow puppet in the massive chair. Federico sighed and approached me. "Aiden, look up. A king must never show weakness." The words triggered me, and I looked up with eyes full of rage and hurt. "I am the king. I do what I want. You can't control me." Federico, uncharacteristically angered, raised his voice with unprecedented severity. "A true king earns respect. A king who must constantly assert his status only proves his own weakness. Aiden, this is cowardice." Stung, my pent-up fear and pressure exploded into tears. "You don't think I'm a real king. You think my sister, Lynn, should be on the throne." I slid to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Federico watched with a complex expression. He glared at the terrified court attendants hiding in the corners. The attendants fell to their knees. "We heard nothing. We saw nothing," they swore. "Get out," Federico commanded. They scrambled away, leaving the two alone. Federico softened, realizing he had been too harsh on the grieving, insecure child. He knelt down to meet my eye level. "No, Aiden. You are the king, the heir chosen by August. You are young and need to learn. I will find you the best teachers to make you a great monarch. Until then, I will clear the path for you. I will handle anyone who threatens you or the kingdom." He reached out to touch my head, but hesitated and pulled his hand back. He sighed and walked away, leaving me sobbing alone in the hall. Federico ordered the attendants outside. "Take care of the king. If I hear a word of what happened today, we will be silent, Regent," they promised, rushing inside. Later that afternoon, Federico dined with a hulking man in ancestral armor. The man carried a blood-red greatsword and radiated a fierce, martial aura. This was Earl Boss, the Cinderblade Knight, renowned for his loyalty. "Boss," Federico said, setting down his glass. "This afternoon, I rely on you." Earl Boss stood straight, struck his chest, and roared his affirmation. "Duke, do not worry. Whether it is that old fox Cons Montalban or his champion, I will end them within 3 moves." My tone was filled with absolute confidence, which is easy to maintain when you're the one holding the giant sword. Federico opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted. A guard outside announced, "Duke, the carriage is ready." Federico nodded and stood up, followed closely by Earl Boss. They boarded the golden carriage bearing the LaRoche family crest, escorted by guards toward the outskirts of Orlandia. Their destination was the Caesar Duel Arena, an ancient stone structure long forgotten by the public. It was once the site for resolving noble disputes and proving honor. Years of neglect had left it abandoned, rarely visited by anyone. Today, however, it buzzed with life due to an unprecedented trial by combat. 2 titans of the kingdom, a former prime minister and the current regent, were to face off. They would duel to the death to determine who was the true regicide. This was a historic scandal. Crowds of commoners and minor nobles filled the dilapidated stands, whispering, "I heard Marquis Cons prepared the finest armor and sword." "What good is that? He's too old to stand a chance against Earl Boss." True, Earl Boss is a renowned titled knight. To think 2 prime ministers would duel here. As Federico's carriage arrived, the crowd stirred. The elderly, low-ranking adjudicator in charge struggled to maintain order. Spotting the golden lion crest, he rushed forward with surprising speed. Trembling with excitement, he approached as Federico and Earl Boss stepped out. The crowd surged forward to see the regent, but was held back by the guards' icy glares. "Regent," they cried. Federico nodded calmly. The old official shoved through the crowd, breathless. He bowed deeply, his voice stuttering with nerves. "Our regent. Welcome. I am Prose, the adjudicator in charge of this site." My mother was from Windhowl Town in the west. At the mention of the west, Federico's expression flickered. He reached out to shake the old man's hand. "Well met, Prose. Thank you for your hard work." Prose was so overwhelmed he nearly fainted, wiping his hands on his robes before gingerly grasping the Duke's fingers. "It is my greatest honor." Prose led them through the crowd to the preparation area, where Marquis Cons Montalban already sat. I suppose the man was just waiting to see if he'd be dead by lunch. He wore polished armor engraved with eagles, looking less like a prisoner and more like a statesman. Bareheaded, his hair perfectly groomed, he sat straight, staring coldly as Federico approached. His eyes held no fear, only a deep, bone-chilling hatred. Federico stopped. The 2 old rivals locked eyes, the air crackling with invisible tension. After a moment, they looked away simultaneously, as if the sight of the other was an insult. Prose wiped his sweat and asked, "Marquis Cons, will you fight yourself or name a champion?" Cons replied, "I shall defend my honor myself." Prose then turned to Federico, "And you, Regent?" Federico, though he would have fought himself in his youth, now carried too much responsibility to risk it. "I was tired and burdened. I could not afford to gamble, which is a real shame, because I'm usually quite the thrill-seeker. Earl Boss will fight in my stead," he answered. Boss stepped forward, a towering wall of strength. Prose turned to the crowd to announce the decision. "It is confirmed. Marquis Cons will fight personally. Regent Federico is represented by Earl Boss." The crowd murmured, unsurprised. The disparity in strength was obvious. Most expected a one-sided slaughter. Prose climbed the ancient stone platform and shouted, "Combatants, take the stage." Khan stood and walked steadily up the stone steps. Boss followed, radiating menace. He carried a massive, blood-red greatsword, his heavy footsteps echoing. The contrast between the hulking boss and the frail Khans drew whispers from the stands. How is this a fair fight? Khans is too stubborn. Quiet. He's a high noble from the royal territory. He was once. That was then. Look at boss. Pros interrupted, calling for silence to begin the sacred oath. Both men raised their swords. They recited the oath in low, echoing voices. Before Caesar and the gods, I volunteer for this sacred duel, to defend my honor. May the holy light witness this fairness. The victor has no shame, the loser no complaints. The solemn oath ended, and pros scrambled off the stage. I declare this trial begun. Boss immediately leveled his great sword, his battle chi flaring. Khans, however, did not move. He stood still, scanning the crowd, clearly hoping to find someone who still thought his speech was a good idea. His voice boomed, silencing the murmurs. People of the royal territory, do you know what I, Khans Montauban, have done for this kingdom? Many in the crowd lowered their heads, recalling the prosperity his policies had brought them. I began as a humble tax official. Khans continued, his voice heavy with sorrow. I climbed to prime minister to restore royal power and suppress the four borders. I fought so that Orlandia would rule, and you could live in peace without bowing to the dukes. Raising his voice, Khans shouted, you all know the dukes of the four borders are ambitious separatists who have never cared for the kingdom, the king, or you. I have dedicated my life and loyalty to this kingdom and to you, yet now I am to be. Enough, Earl Boss roared, cutting off Khans' inflammatory rhetoric. Refusing to let him continue, Boss charged like a scarlet whirlwind, his greatsword surging with terrifying battle chi. Boss held nothing back, aiming to end the fight instantly. Khans, aged and out of practice, tried to block. How could he withstand the peak strength of a titled knight like Earl Boss? Clang! A piercing metallic shriek rang out as Khans' sword shattered under the greatsword's force, sending it spinning away. Khans was struck as if by a giant hammer, stumbling backward to collapse at the edge of the platform. The crowd watched in horror. Some wept and begged. Earl Boss, have mercy. Regent, spare him. He's already lost. Khans struggled to rise, blood trickling from his lips. Ignoring the pain, he glared at the expressionless Federico below. Abandoning his weapon, he used his remaining strength to point at Federico. His voice, raspy from injury and rage, carried clearly across the arena. Federico, look at the public sentiment. You thief of royal power. You hypocritical regent. You oppress the young king to seize power. You are the true traitor of the Orlando kingdom. The four borders have long since turned away from you. Only we in the royal territory remain the true loyalists and the steadfast defenders of the Caesar bloodline. His accusation stunned the crowd into silence. Before anyone could react, Khans picked up his fallen blade and held it to his own throat. Earl Boss froze in his tracks, watching in shock. Lord Khans, no, the crowd cried out. Khans roared his final defiance at Federico. Federico, I'll be waiting for you in hell. He pulled the blade across his neck. Blood sprayed as his life faded. He convulsed once and collapsed onto the stone platform with a heavy thud. His dying gaze fixed on a hooded figure in the crowd. Was that Cain? Is it an illusion? Seeing his beloved grandson, Khans smiled as he passed away. In the crowd, the hooded Cain bit his lip until it bled, his nails digging into his palms. Tears blurred his vision, but his eyes remained fixed on Federico like poisoned daggers. He made a silent, desperate vow. Federico, this blood feud is irreconcilable. I, Cain Montauban, swear to make you and the LaRoche family pay. Pros, recovering from the shock of the accusation and suicide, turned pale and weak-kneed. He climbed back onto the platform, trembling as he looked at Khan's smiling corpse. Swallowing hard, he announced, the trial by combat is concluded. Khans Montauban is the regicide. His words fell flat. The crowd's eyes were fixed on the silent regent, Federico LaRoche. Khans Montauban had executed his final political performance with brutal finality, a bit dramatic for my taste, but he certainly nailed the ending. He had washed away the stigma of regicide from himself. Instead, he branded Federico with the damning labels of usurper, oppressor of the young king, and murderer of loyalists. The ancient arena remained, heavy with the scent of blood and the shock of the onlookers. Western border. After days of travel, I pulled on my reins as the familiar horizon appeared. The outline of the Obsidian territory came into view. The crude fortifications had been replaced by tall, sturdy stone and wood walls. Flags bearing the Black Dragon emblem flew high, and patrols stood guard. It now rivaled Lucerne City. Pride swelled in my chest, which is a dangerous emotion to have while sitting on a horse. I took a deep breath and shouted toward the walls. "I'm back." The shout echoed across the plains. When the soldiers recognized the white-haired lord, cheers erupted. "It's the lord. Open the gates." The heavy gates groaned open. I, Wolfgang, and the Black Raven Knights rode into the Obsidian territory. The interior was even more impressive. Excited citizens and soldiers gathered to welcome me. They surrounded me, offering simple, heartfelt greetings. I noted the significant changes since my departure. Neat rows of houses had replaced the shacks, forming organized streets. Roads were widened and paved, and workshops hummed with activity. Workers dropped their tools to gather around me. Soon, I was surrounded by cheering crowds. "My lord, welcome back." I smiled warmly at their hopeful faces. "I'm back," I replied. Ulu and Das pushed through the crowd, sweating and beaming. "My lord, you've returned," they cheered, then began dispersing the crowd. "All right, everyone. The lord is safe. Back to work, don't disturb him." The people dispersed reluctantly, still smiling and looking back. Ulu asked, "My lord, shall I summon the administrators for a meeting?" I shook my head, admiring the changes. "Not yet. Let them work. I'll look around myself." I dismounted, handed the reins to Das, and turned to my escort. "You've all worked hard. Thank you for your loyalty. Ulu will register your contributions for rewards." The knights and Wolfgang bowed. "You are too kind, my lord. It is our duty. It is our honor to serve you." I signaled Ulu. "Take them to Esther and ensure they are well fed and rewarded." I dismissed Ulu and his knights, then wandered through my territory. The fields were orderly and thriving, with laborers cheering as I passed. Workshops hummed with activity, and the craftsmen greeted me with genuine respect. I visited the new school, finding satisfaction in the sounds of learning emanating from within. Further out, the rhythmic sounds of the logging camp echoed. My tour of the territory was met with sincere joy everywhere I went. I marveled at how the once desolate land had transformed into a place of order. It's amazing what happens when you stop everyone from dying of starvation. The vibrant productivity and hope for the future lifted my spirits. Acknowledging the excellent work of old John and Sebastian, I reached the fishing grounds, where I encountered a small girl grooming a marmot on the shore. The girl was meticulously brushing the creature. The marmot lounged on a rock, enjoying the water. I recognized the creature and gasped. "Gulu, Lord!" The manager, Sean, hurried over upon seeing me. The commotion drew the attention of the workers and the marmot. Gulu stopped playing, and the girl, Rena, cheered. I waved off the workers and greeted a breathless Sean. Sean wiped his wet hands on his clothes before shaking my hand. "My lord, you've returned. This is wonderful." Sean looked embarrassed as he noticed his daughter holding the squirming marmot. Sean introduced his daughter, Rena, and the marmot. I laughed, confirming I knew the creature, and patted Rena's head before asking Gulu why it was there. Rena whispered that Gulu often came to play. Gulu broke free from her arms. It climbed up my leg and settled on my shoulder, patting its chest proudly. "Humph." Gulu looked smug. "Ignorant human. I am researching how to use these fish to create the world's best grilled fish." Sean nervously explained that Sebastian had ordered them to treat Gulu as an honored guest. It was clear that managing the demanding, talking marmot was a headache for Sean, though honestly, I've had worse co-workers. I nodded, dismissed the workers, and asked Gulu if it had been causing trouble. Gulu bristled. "I am wise and beloved. I was just helping that old man Sean watch his child. Look how much she likes me." I twitched, then asked about Queen Irene. Gulu's mood instantly deflated. "The princess is exhausted. She's been sleeping in the sanctuary and won't wake up. I got bored, so I came here." Gulu glared at me, asserting that this was the princess's territory and therefore its own. I grew concerned about Irene's condition but humored the marmot, inviting it to eat. Gulu's eyes lit up. "Food? Where? Let's go." After a lively lunch with Gulu, I tried to send the marmot away, but it blocked my path. Hey, human lord, don't run off. You must come with me to see the princess. She's been asleep for ages. You need to report your work. I found the creature's bossiness amusing yet frustrating. Apparently, I'm now taking performance reviews from a rodent. I agreed to visit after finishing my administrative duties. Satisfied, Gulu hopped away toward the fishing grounds. I ordered my attendants to gather the department heads for a meeting in half an hour, then entered the renovated council hall. The walls were now paneled and varnished. The benches had been replaced with more comfortable chairs. 2 new banners hung behind the main seat. They bore the Pendragon family crest, the Black Dragon. The staff arrived, greeting me with warmth and respect. Old John, Hardy, Esther, Leon, Ika, Scholar Alva, and Ulu were present. I noticed Master Glenn and Buck were missing. I asked Leon about Master Glenn. Leon looked uneasy. Master Glenn is in the workshop, fully focused on a project. I didn't dare disturb his inspiration. Scholar Alva laughed, offering to pass on the message later. He listens to me, at least. I understood and comforted Leon. You did well. I'll visit him myself later. I then asked about Buck. Ika stood up, looking serious. A few days ago, we received an urgent request from Brandon in Lucerne City. Their patrols were attacked by unidentified armed forces. They feared it was a precursor to a larger assault. Buck took 200 elite soldiers and some Black Raven Knights to reinforce them. I frowned. It was likely remnants of the Federation. Ika added that they had received a letter from Buck the day before. The letter reported that the bandit raid was a minor incident and had been successfully repelled. Captain Buck is finalizing defenses and will soon return to Obsidian territory. I nodded, dismissing the thought of the attack. Understood. Buck handled it well. Though Ika sounded casual, I was alarmed. The Federation's remnants were stirring. I turned to my subordinates with a smile, mostly to hide the fact that I was already mentally drafting a contingency plan. During my absence, your efforts have driven Obsidian territory's remarkable growth. You all deserve credit. The tension in the room vanished, replaced by pride and relief. You are too kind, my lord, they chorused. It is thanks to your solid foundation that we could execute the plans, one added. Indeed, your guidance made all the difference. I laughed, waving off the flattery. Enough with the pleasantries. Report your progress. Old John, start with construction. John stood, energetic despite his age. The main city walls are now nearly 8 meters high. They are thicker and stronger, with work ongoing. With no new influx of slaves, I've prioritized housing. We are upgrading collective shacks into sturdy wood or stone houses. The residents are highly motivated, and progress is smooth. We have also paved and widened the main roads. And we've renovated the Lord's castle, including the council hall and warehouses. I nodded approvingly. Excellent work, old John. John grinned and credited his team. It was thanks to Esther's logistics, Leon's tools, and the cooperation of the slave overseers. Hardy, in charge of agriculture and water, stood next. He detailed the expanded farmland, crop rotation, new irrigation canals, and fishery operations. Yields had increased significantly. I praised him, then turned to Esther, the diligent steward. Esther reported on the reserves of grain, salt, iron, and cloth. Supplies were stable for months. Leon reported on the mines and workshops, while Ika updated on intelligence and patrols. I praised everyone, promising rewards based on their contributions. I then paused. It's amazing how much work gets done when I'm not around to accidentally break things. There is one more matter regarding our future development. I wanted to discuss it today, but since Captain Buck is away, we shall wait for his return. Any other questions? Old John hesitated before standing. My lord, where is Lady Lynn Aurora? Why didn't she return with you? The others echoed the question, suddenly realizing her absence. I decided to reveal part of the truth to my core team. Lynn Aurora has reunited with her kin, the LaRoche family of the West. She is staying in Thorn City for a while. The room erupted in shock. The LaRoche family? Hardy, a native of the West, was stunned. Scholar Alva asked, My lord, what does this mean for our relationship with the LaRoche family? I gestured for calm. It is a complex family matter. I will explain the details once I have sorted things out. For now, let this be known. Meeting adjourned. The subordinates left, whispering about the explosive news. Hardy lingered, approaching me cautiously. My lord, May I speak freely? Go ahead. Hardy lowered his voice. You must work hard to win her heart. If our future heir possesses the noble blood of the LaRoche family, our territory's future will be limitless. He bolted from the room before I could react. I stood there, amused yet thoughtful. It was a valid point, though I hadn't realized my love life was now a matter of regional economic strategy. After the meeting, I headed to the Mithril mine near Nightsong Forest. The guards, veteran soldiers, saluted me with deep respect. The entrance was a hive of activity, with miners moving carts and the sounds of labor echoing from within. Leon, the mine manager, greeted me nervously. My lord, you've arrived at the right time. Master Glenn has just finished forging and is resting. I followed Leon into the mine, reaching a reinforced chamber converted into Master Glenn's workshop. The space was sparse, containing only a forge, anvil, quenching pool, and a simple bed. Several metallic weapons hung on the wall, catching the light. Master Glenn sat on his bed, wiping sweat from his brow. Seeing me, his wrinkled face lit up with a laugh. You're back. Did the great nobles in Thorn City try to tear you apart? I smiled respectfully. Master Glenn, I'm still in one piece, thanks to you. I'm here to check on the mithril mining and see your latest creations. Glenn laughed and pointed to the pile of silver gray ore. Don't worry, kid. With Glenn Pal in charge, production is steady and quality is high. As requested, our elite soldiers are now equipped with mithril-infused weapons. They are sharper and tougher, easily cutting through standard iron armor. He looked proudly at the weapons on the wall. I've been itching to forge something, so I used raw mithril to craft a few high-purity masterpieces, Master Glenn said. Of course, they can't compare to the silver sword I poured my heart into for you. I looked at the wall, where a sleek longsword, a shimmering spear, a fierce broad-bladed saber, and a greatsword hung. Each glowed with the cold luster of mithril. Intrigued, I stepped forward to inspect them. The spear and longsword, in particular, impressed me with their design and faint energy fluctuations. Master Glenn, your craftsmanship is truly peerless. How about you let me take this sword and spear? Glenn laughed heartily instead of showing reluctance. Good lad, you've got an eye for quality. A true smith's work is meant to be used, not left to rust on a wall. Take them. He waved dismissively, then pointed to the massive greatsword. But that big one stays. It's made from my best remaining material, reserved for your father, Marquis Leon Black. He saved my life, so I'm returning the favor. I felt a surge of warmth. Glenn was as thoughtful as he was gruff. Thank you, master. My father will be delighted with such a gift. I took the sword and spear, noting their excellent balance. I planned to give the sword to Captain Buck and the spear to Baron Ron of Rune City. I then instructed Leon to prioritize all resources for Master Glenn. Understood, Lord. Leon bowed. Satisfied with the new weapons and the mine's status, I departed. It's amazing how much more productive people are when you don't actually have to swing the hammer yourself. After notifying Esther, I headed to the fishery to find Gulu. The energetic marmot was splashing in the shallows, playing wildly. Gulu, stop playing, we're leaving. We need to be quick. Gulu surfaced, shook its wet head, and retorted indignantly. Playing? Ignorant human. I am meditating on the power of water, practicing deep cultivation. I twitched at the blatant lie. Gulu swam ashore and shook itself dry, spraying water all over me. Ha ha. Gulu laughed, clutching its belly. Drink Gulu-sama's bathwater for daring to command me. I glared at my wet robes, my patience wearing thin. I kicked Gulu's round belly. Wah! Gulu shrieked, splashing back into the river. When it crawled back out, it was much more obedient. I grabbed some desserts and food from the territory. I and the bedraggled Gulu set off for the elven sanctuary deep in the Nightsong Forest. I walked briskly, leaving the short-legged Gulu panting behind. Slow down. You hateful human. Gulu-sama. Gulu-sama apologizes, okay? Seeing I wouldn't stop, Gulu grew desperate. It lunged forward, bit my pant leg, and scrambled up. It collapsed on my shoulder, gasping for air. I sighed but let it stay. Soon, the sapphire-like lake appeared. The mirror-like surface was breathtaking. It never gets old, I remarked. I tapped Gulu. We're here. Open the gate. Gulu turned away. I didn't hear you. I'm tired. Beg me properly. I simply grabbed the marmot and tossed it onto the ground. Ouch. Gulu squeaked. I ignored it and called to the lake. Valerian, open the gate. Gulu, scrambling up, burst into laughter. Ha! You think a noble star-reflecting tide dragon, our sacred beast, would listen to you? The laughter died as the lake rippled. A massive blue dragon had emerged, its scales shimmering, its deep eyes fixed on me. Gulu jumped up, pointing at the dragon. Valerian, you traitor. You've embarrassed me. I felt the suffocating dragon pressure and swallowed hard. I thought, the one who should be embarrassed is you, not me. I forced a friendly smile, mostly to keep my face from freezing into a mask of pure terror. Respected Valerian, I am Eli Black. I seek an audience with Princess Irene regarding an urgent matter. The dragon stopped a meter away, its breath cold. Valerian, don't eat him. He's the princess's guest. Gulu yelled. Suddenly, a clear, confused girl's voice echoed in my mind. Human Eli, I know you. The princess is in the sanctuary, but she told me to say she isn't. I was speechless. Apparently, the dragon's primary job description included being a terrible liar. I looked at the confused dragon. I tried to reason with the peculiar creature. Respected Valerian, are you sure you heard right? The princess is inside. Why would she say she isn't? And look, Gulu brought me here. Valerian's eyes blinked, pondering. Silence fell. Finally, the girl's voice returned, sounding enlightened. Oh, you're right. I must have misheard. The princess must have said is. I'll open the bridge. Valerian opened its maw, and the water parted to reveal a transparent tunnel. Gulu stomped over. It stood akimbo, shouting at the massive dragon. Hey, you silly dragon. I told you many times. Only open it when I tell you. You're making Gulu-sama look bad. I watched in shock. A tiny marmot was scolding an ancient dragon whose head was the size of a house. Even more unbelievable, Valerian lowered its head. It let out a whimpering sound, looking genuinely innocent. Gulu crossed its arms, laughing triumphantly. Know your mistake. Listen to Gulu-sama next time. Having disciplined the dragon, Gulu waved at me. Let's go, you hateful human. Follow Gulu-sama. It hopped onto the stairs. I suppressed my bewilderment and followed, passing through the white jade gate into the sanctuary. Gulu sprinted toward the glowing throne. Princess, you're finally awake. Gulu is back, and I brought that silly human for you. I strode into the hall, my gaze immediately locking onto the familiar, exquisite figure upon the throne. Queen Irene wore her simple yet noble elven attire, her silver hair cascading like moonlight. Her deep eyes watched me silently as I bowed respectfully. Eli Black, reporting to your highness. A cold, scrutinizing gaze immediately swept over me. I tensed, holding my bow and barely daring to breathe. Gulu scrambled up the throne and dove into Irene's arms. The creature nuzzled her, immediately launching into a list of my grievances. Your highness, this human is despicable. He dared to order the great Gulu around, and even kicked my noble stomach. Punish him. Turn him into a frog. My mouth twitched in frustration. It was just a light tap, and I had even brought snacks. Irene stroked Gulu's fur. She placed the squirming creature on her lap, her eyes fixed on me. Quiet, Gulu, she said, her voice cool. You left the Obsidian territory recently? I straightened up, relieved. Yes, your highness. I was summoned by Lucius LaRoche of the western border to Thorn City. I returned today and came immediately to report after handling my duties. Thorn City. Irene frowned slightly. The LaRoche family? My heart sank. I had forgotten the deep-seated blood feud between the elves and the LaRoche family. I scrambled to explain. Yes, your highness. That treacherous LaRoche family used their authority to force me to Thorn. I was powerless to refuse and had to play along. Irene watched me, her eyes flashing with an inscrutable light. She let out a playful, cold laugh. It was the kind of sound that usually precedes an execution. Oh, merely unable to refuse? Then why do you reek of another elf? I was stunned, struck as if by lightning. The scent of an elf? I hadn't encountered any others besides Irene and Gulu. I searched my memory in vain. Gulu, feeling Irene's grip tighten, winced under the heavy affection. Hearing Irene, Gulu jumped onto the armrest, eyes wide. What? Another elf? Where? Are they as cute as the great Gulu? I felt dizzy. Your highness, I swear on my life. I have never encountered any other elf. If I carry such a scent, it must be the blessing of your own radiance. Irene seemed slightly flustered by the flattery, though she quickly regained her composure. I said it is there, and my senses do not fail. I groaned inwardly at her irritability, which was apparently as sharp as her nose. Perhaps I picked it up in a corner of Thorn City from some hermit? But I assure you, I am loyal only to you. Irene's expression softened at my renewed vow of loyalty, and she let the matter drop. Gulu pondered, scratching its head. Your Highness, could the scent be from the west? Long ago, some of our kin left due to disagreements. They crossed the Set Desert to find a new home. Could it be their descendants? My heart skipped a beat. Crossing the desert to the Western Federation? Were there really elven branches there? Irene nodded thoughtfully. It is possible, given the lost records. Satisfied, Gulu forgot the topic and patted its empty stomach. Your Highness, you must be hungry. We brought the best snacks from the Obsidian territory. I picked them out myself. I quickly unwrapped the pastries and offered them respectfully. Irene's gaze shifted to Gulu. A faint smile touched her lips. Gulu, didn't you say your grilled fish was exceptional? Gulu blinked, confused. But seeing her meaningful look, it realized. The princess wanted its cooking. It puffed out its chest. Yes, you know me so well. I have been perfecting my water-style grilling technique. It's better than ever. I, seeing a chance to improve the mood, volunteered. Your Highness, I am also quite skilled. May I assist? Gulu bristled, pointing a claw at me. Hey, human, are you trying to challenge the great Gulu to a cooking contest? I never expected a formal report to turn into a cooking competition. I suppose it's a step up from being executed, but only slightly. Even more shocking was the unexpected prize at stake. Irene looked at the eager Gulu with a flicker of interest. She waved her hand, causing the space to ripple. A giant egg, covered in faint, complex patterns, appeared between them. The winner of this contest shall receive this dragon egg. My breath hitched, my mind reeling at the words dragon egg. A legendary dragon egg meant unparalleled power and glory, the ultimate prize for any ambitious lord. Unlike my excitement, Gulu curled its lip in disdain. Your Highness, the magic tide has long receded. The ambient magic isn't enough to hatch a dragon. Isn't this just a fancy rock? The magic tide had receded? Dragons couldn't hatch? Gulu's whisper dampened my fervor. I noted the critical information, though my gaze remained locked on the egg. Even if it couldn't hatch, a dragon egg was an invaluable treasure. Irene seemed momentarily lost in thought at Gulu's remark. I urgently stopped Queen Irene as she moved to retract the dragon egg, insisting it was the perfect prize for our wager. Irene watched my eagerness with amusement, recalling my previous interest in Valerian. Gulu protested the rock, but I remained firm. Irene silenced them, declaring the egg the official prize. She told Gulu that if it won, it could demand an equivalent favor from me. Gulu considered this and pointed at me with a mischievous grin. If I win, you must let me ride on your neck around the Obsidian territory. 3 times. Irene glanced at me, a faint smile touching her lips. Though I twitched at the prospect, I agreed for the sake of the egg. Gulu preened in triumph, clearly unaware that my dignity had already left the building. Irene signaled to start with a wave of her hand. 2 sets of grilling tools and 2 plump, iridescent 7-colored moonlight fish appeared. The fish were clearly magical, pulsing with vitality despite being out of water. I felt the potent energy within the fish as I gripped it. I focused, expertly scaling and gutting the fish before scoring it and skewering it for the grill. As I began to roast mine, Gulu proved equally adept. The mouse donned a tiny apron, handling its fish with surprising skill. Ignorant human, behold my supreme grilling technique, fused with the balance of water elements. Gulu boasted. Soon, the aroma of roasting fish filled the air. I frowned. The scent was incredibly pure even without seasoning. As the space rippled, Valerian's dragon head poked in, begging for a taste. Irene used a transformation spell, turning the dragon into a small girl with blue horns. I marveled at the magic, but refocused on my cooking. Both finished. Mine was golden and savory, while Gulu's featured a complex, secret sauce. The young Valerian drooled, staring hungrily at the plates. Irene tasted my portion first, savoring the flavor. She closed her eyes, clearly delighted by the taste. She praised the natural sweetness of my fish. Then, she turned to Gulu's. Valerian snatched a bite from Gulu's plate, earning the mouse's ire. Irene tasted the remainder, her eyes brightening with surprise. The seasoning was sophisticated and layered, a massive improvement for Gulu. Gulu danced with joy at the praise. Valerian quickly devoured the rest of Gulu's fish, leaving only bones. She eyed my remaining portion hungrily. Irene gently blocked her, claiming the rest for herself. Irene judged the contest. Gulu's seasoning was too overpowering, masking the fish's natural essence. My preparation, however, perfectly preserved the fish's inherent freshness. I won. I was ecstatic, while Gulu sulked, eventually admitting my fish was slightly better. Irene sat silently, seemingly ignoring me, which is a great way to make a victory feel like a social failure. Time passed, and I stood awkwardly, unsure if I should leave. I decided to approach the egg myself. Valerian looked up from her fish bones. Eli, it's storming outside. It's dangerous to carry that egg out now. I listened, finally hearing the thunder and rain against the lake. Gulu burped, satisfied. It's late and raining, Gulu suggested. Let him stay the night. There are plenty of rooms. Irene hesitated, her gaze lingering on me. She sensed the storm and agreed. That night, I tossed and turned on a cold stone bed. Memories of Irene kept me awake. Nearby, Irene lay on a white jade bed, equally restless. She felt troubled and agitated. I went to get water and ran into Irene in the corridor. They locked eyes in the dim light, both struck by sudden awkwardness. They silently turned away and retreated to their rooms. Irene hid under her covers, her eyes wide in the dark. It was a long night for both. Morning arrived with a ticklish sensation. I woke to find Gulu jumping on my chest. Wake up, lazy human. The sun is up. I sighed and sat up, lifting the mouse. Apparently, my chest is a trampoline now. Light filtered through the window. I'm leaving now, Gulu. Gulu squirmed, insisting on coming along because it was bored of waiting for the sleeping queen. I refused, citing the potential dangers in my territory. Gulu scoffed, claiming its senses were far superior to any humans. I reluctantly agreed to let Gulu accompany me, provided the creature behaved. Gulu chirped happily and perched on my shoulder. I tidied my clothes and carefully lifted the massive dragon egg from the corner of the room. The egg felt cold and heavy in my hands as I took a deep breath. I left the underwater sanctuary, crossing the water bridge back to the shore. As I prepared to head toward obsidian territory, the lake's surface suddenly erupted. Valerian's massive blue head emerged, watching me and the egg with curiosity. Human Eli, Valerian's voice echoed in my mind. Do you need a lift? Carrying that egg is exhausting. My heart raced. A ride from a dragon? I accepted with eager gratitude. However, Valerian added, I cannot leave Night Song Forest, so I can only take you to the edge. I agreed instantly. Valerian took flight, circling gracefully before landing nearby. The dragon landed, creating a gentle breeze. Valerian lowered its back for me. Gulu grumbled jealously, but I hushed it, clutching the egg and mounting the dragon's broad back. With a powerful beat of its wings, Valerian soared into the blue sky. Below, the forest shrank into a green ocean, with distant mountains coming into view. The sensation of soaring on a dragon was breathtaking. Valerian flew at incredible speeds. My hair whipped in the wind, and I shouted in exhilaration, releasing my pent-up stress. Gulu buried its head in my clothes, squeaking in terror. Slow down. You're going to drop us, you clumsy dragon. Gulu shrieked. They reached the edge of Night Song Forest in moments. Suddenly, Valerian rolled in midair. Goodbye, Eli and Gulu. I lost my grip, and I, the egg, and Gulu plummeted toward the ground. Apparently, goodbye was just a polite way of saying, I'm bored with you now. Just before impact, a giant water bubble enveloped them, cushioning the fall. I landed safely, though shaken. After catching my breath and securing the egg, I set off for Obsidian Territory. My return to Obsidian Territory with the giant egg drew curious stares from the villagers. Ignoring them, I headed straight for the castle. I locked the egg in a secure storage room near my bedroom. Captain Buck arrived shortly after to report. The knight stared at the massive egg in confusion. My lord, what beast is this from? I've never seen anything like it. I dismissed it, claiming I found it in the forest and thought it was a rare beast egg. I quickly changed the subject, inviting Buck to my study. I asked about the recent support mission to Lucerne City. Buck reported that the bandits were defeated, but noted something strange about them. They used unique, ring-shaped weapons with razor-sharp edges. Buck had never seen such weapons in the kingdom, leading them to suspect the Federation. The style of the weapons strongly pointed toward the Federation. I sighed, then informed Buck that Sir Lucius had ordered me to participate in the campaign to reclaim the western border. Buck was skeptical, questioning if their current forces were sufficient for such a large-scale operation. I clarified that the main force would be the Western legions under Marquis Marcus. I and Baron Ron of Runestone City were tasked with the southern front, targeting Kyle City and Emerald City. Their role was primarily support and containment. Buck relaxed, realizing the opportunity this presented. Buck mentioned the rumors of Prince Aiden's coronation as Aiden I, with Duke Federico serving as regent. I confirmed the news. Buck noted that the transition of power had been surprisingly smooth. He suspected that my father and the nobility had firmly backed Duke Federico. I prompted him to continue. Buck analyzed that Marquis Leon's long-standing control over the Royal Capital Guard was key. Even after being replaced by Marquis Toscana, Leon's influence remained. Apparently, old habits and loyal guards die hard. Without Leon's tacit support, Federico could not have stabilized the capital so quickly. Buck smiled knowingly. He suggested that my and Lynn Aurora's status played a role, concluding that this was good for Obsidian territory. I chuckled, surprised by Buck's insight. It's always unsettling when the help starts thinking for themselves. I praised Buck's understanding of political maneuvers. Buck humbly brushed it off. He claimed he had merely learned the basics while serving under Marquis Leon. He sighed, reflecting on the complexity of court life. As they spoke, I accessed my information system. A purple alert flashed in my mind. Purple information. The Federation remnants occupying Storm City have gathered their elite forces, planning a surprise assault on Thorn City to turn the tide and rescue a high-ranking captive. I stood up abruptly, my face pale. "What is it, my lord?" Buck asked, startled by the sudden reaction. "Something major has happened, Captain Buck." I stood up abruptly, my face grim. Seeing my distress, Buck felt a jolt of alarm. Having served me for a long time, he knew his young lord rarely lost his composure. He stood silently, waiting for me to collect my thoughts. I paced the study, filled with self-reproach. I cursed my negligence. My information system had previously reported that the Federation forces in Storm City were aware of the Orlando Kingdom's internal turmoil and had issued a mobilization order. I had dismissed it as mere defensive posturing, never suspecting they would dare such a gamble. They were targeting Thorn City, the heart of the West. I forced myself to think. The timing was perfect, as the kingdom's focus was entirely on the royal capital. Marquis Marcus and the Western nobility were currently at the royal capital for the Great Assembly. Sir Lucius, while capable, was preoccupied. His focus was entirely on logistics, supplies, and strategic planning for the upcoming counteroffensive. Thorn City's defenses were likely at a cyclical low due to this distraction. No one expected the remnants of the Federation, supposedly broken, to launch a desperate, all-out assault. This audacity was their greatest tactical advantage. I frowned deeply. The most terrifying question remained. How did they obtain such precise, timely intelligence regarding the royal capital's shift and the West's military plans? I sighed, my expression heavy. I turned to Buck. "Our entire plan is in jeopardy." Buck finally asked, "What happened, my lord?" I looked out at the bustling Obsidian territory and lowered my voice. Sebastian informed me that the Federation remnants in Storm City intend to launch a surprise attack on Thorn City. Even Buck gasped in disbelief. "They dare?" Thorn City is the LaRoche family's fortress of 1,000 years. It is the perfect time for them, I insisted. If they succeed, even briefly, the consequences would be catastrophic. Buck's face turned pale as he realized the implications. An attack on Thorn City would trigger a massive earthquake across the kingdom. The LaRoche family's prestige would crumble, and without Federico to suppress the vassals, the West would descend into chaos, ending all plans for reclaiming lost territory. Opportunistic factions would surely seize the chance to trigger a civil war. It's always nice to know that when things go south, everyone is eager to help them go further south. We must prevent this. We need a decisive victory, I declared. This concerns the fate of the entire West. Buck, I must leave the territory in your hands. I must go to Thorn City to warn Sir Lucius personally. Buck nodded, understanding the necessity. I understand. The bandits we encountered near Lucerne City were likely their scouts. The road is dangerous. Let Wolfgang and I escort you with a squad of elite knights. I shook my head. Speed is of the essence. A large group is too slow. I will rely on the old butler. Buck's expression relaxed at the mention of Sebastian. If Lord Sebastian is assisting, your safety is assured. Buck had always found the butler's power a mystery. I ordered, Buck, hold an emergency meeting, secure Obsidian territory and Lucerne City, and alert Brandon to enter high alert. Prepare for the worst. I took a deep breath. If Thorn City falls or the Federation attacks us directly, I authorize you to abandon Lucerne City. Consolidate all resources into Obsidian territory to preserve our foundation. Buck struck his chest firmly. Understood, my lord. I will defend our home with my life. Buck left immediately to carry out his orders. I hurried to Sebastian's room and knocked urgently. The door opened to reveal the butler, calm as ever, sipping tea. My lord, please enter. What has caused such haste? I stepped inside. No time for details. Get me to Thorn City as fast as possible. Use that method you used in the Night Song Forest. Sebastian calmly sipped his tea. Very well. But please, wait until I finish my tea. I suppose the world-ending threat can wait for a proper steep. Forget the tea. I'll give you all the top-tier green leaf morning dew I got from Sir Lucius. Let's go. Sebastian's eyes flickered with interest. He set down his cup, calculating. The shadow stealth technique has limits. Direct travel to Thorn City is too far and energy-intensive. We must ride toward Thorn City first. In 3 days, we will reach a range where I can use the technique to teleport us directly inside. I agreed immediately. Wait for me at the stables while I change and prepare. Moments later, at the stables, I and a gray-clad Sebastian mounted our fastest warhorses. They carried essential supplies. I looked back at Obsidian territory one last time, my heart firm. I pulled the reins. Hiya! The 2 horses galloped out of the city gates, racing toward Thorn City in the northeast. I, having just returned to the Obsidian territory from Thorn, was forced to depart once more due to intelligence that threatened the entire kingdom. It's starting to feel like I'm just a glorified courier with a very high mortality rate. During the grueling journey, I briefed Sebastian on the Federation's potential plan to assemble elite forces for a surprise attack on Thorn City. Sebastian listened silently, his expression hidden beneath his hood. Once I finished, Sebastian simply nodded and replied in his usual steady tone, "This servant understands." There were no unnecessary words or signs of anxiety. This absolute composure provided me with a strange sense of stability amidst my mounting urgency. By the 3rd night, the relentless pace had pushed us to our limits. Even their finest warhorses were exhausted, panting heavily in the cold air. Seeking cover behind a small hill, Sebastian dismounted and patted his horse. "My lord, we have arrived. Please come closer." I obeyed, and Sebastian closed his eyes, forming a mysterious hand seal. He began to chant in an ancient, obscure language that seemed to echo from a distant realm. Shadows wandering the seams of reality. Hear my call. Use the darkness as a vessel and intent as a rudder to traverse the boundaries of space. As he chanted, the surrounding night seemed to come alive. A tide of living darkness surged from all directions, swallowing us whole. Light and sound vanished. I felt as though I were plummeting into a void. I gained a new appreciation for the mysterious power my butler possessed. "Open!" Sebastian uttered the final syllable, and a powerful force enveloped me. The world spun as we hurtled through a river of pure darkness at impossible speeds. Time blurred until, in a flash, blinding light forced me to open my eyes. As my vision cleared, the sight before me left me stunned. The majestic La Roche fortress was bathed in the golden light of dawn. We had arrived at the heart of Thorn City in an instant. Sebastian gently set me down. I shook my head, feeling as though I had just emerged from a surreal dream. "We have arrived, my lord." Sebastian's voice remained calm, though I noticed the old butler's hands trembling slightly and his face appearing unusually pale. It's comforting to know that even magical teleportation has a high probability of causing motion sickness. Yes, we're here, I replied, steadying myself. We approached the fortress gates, where guards immediately leveled their spears. Halt! Who goes there? A squad leader recognized my distinctive white hair. His expression shifted, and he stopped his men. Stand down. This is Baron Pendragon, a guest of Sir Lucius. The leader bowed, confused. My lord, didn't you leave Thorn days ago? The situation is critical, I said. I must see Sir Lucius immediately. Seeing my grave expression, the leader did not hesitate. My lord, no need for an announcement. Sir Lucius ordered that you be granted entry at any time. I felt a surge of gratitude as we were ushered inside. We were led through the familiar corridors to Sir Lucius's study. The guard bowed and departed. I knocked firmly. Sir Lucius, it's me. Something terrible has happened. After a moment, Lucius's surprised voice replied, Enter. Lucius sat behind his desk, surrounded by documents. He looked at the travel-worn me with confusion. Eli? Why are you here? And who is this? I bowed. Sir Lucius, forgive the intrusion. This is my butler, Sebastian. Sebastian stepped forward and bowed with impeccable, humble grace. Lucius studied him closely, his eyes narrowing. You look familiar. Have we met? Sebastian replied calmly. My lord, your memory may be mistaken. I have long served in remote lands and have never had the honor of meeting you. Fearing a distraction, I quickly intervened. Sir Lucius, there is no time. A major crisis is unfolding. Lucius turned his attention back to me. What is it? I have confirmed intelligence. The Federation remnants are secretly assembling. Their goal is not defense. They intend to launch a surprise assault on Thorn City. What? Even the composed Lucius stood up abruptly. His brow furrowed, and the air in the room turned frigid. Is this intelligence verified? Lucius demanded, his gaze piercing. Yes, absolutely, I replied, meeting his eyes. My most elite scout risked everything to uncover this. You must believe me. Lucius fell silent for a moment before producing a sealed letter from a locked cabinet. Read this first. It was from Regent Federico LaRoche. The letter noted that Federico had also received reports of Federation troop movements. However, it claimed the Western Federation was in internal chaos. It insisted they could not organize a large-scale invasion, advising Lucius not to worry about the rear. It also confirmed that the plan to retake Storm City had been approved by the royal capital. Yet, the final sentence made me frown. My brother, great chaos is coming. Retake Storm City now, or things will change. Federico's letter confirmed the movements, but clearly underestimated the enemy's ambition, assuming they only meant to disrupt the recovery plan. I admit, Lucius said, I never thought these stray dogs would dare target Thorn City itself. His eyes turned cold as a drawn sword. Your intelligence is vital. It validates the reports my brother and I have received. Lucius patted my shoulder. I believe you. You have performed a great service today. He looked out the window at the waking city, his voice filled with suppressed rage. It seems the first battle to reclaim our lands will begin right here at the gates of Thorn. Good. We shall use their blood to honor the heroes of the western border who fell at Storm City. Herald, Lucius commanded. An attendant entered immediately. Issue an emergency summons in my name to all vassals within 2 days' travel of Thorn City. Order them to mobilize every available soldier and reach Thorn City at once. Tell Count Quintus to prepare the city garrison. Have Baron Ron and the Golden Lion Knights secure the gates. No one enters or leaves without my direct order. Yes, my lord. The attendant hurried away. Lucius looked at me with a complex expression. LaRoche, blood for blood. Aye, prepare yourself. We must win this war. Arrow City, once a vital hub in the western border, it now served as the Federation's staging ground. Occupied by Newell of the Moofing Federation, it had been designated as the base for the upcoming campaign. Paul Botticelli, the highest-ranking commander of the Wanlu Federation forces in the Storm City region, arrived. Leading 3,000 troops gathered from Storm City and its outposts, Paul reached the outskirts. The spectacle before him made his heart sink. The surrounding fields were choked with a chaotic sprawl of military tents. Banners were a mess. Some bore clear city-state emblems. Others were tattered and unrecognizable. Soldiers loitered in groups, their noise a mix of shouting, cursing, and shrill laughter. It looked less like an army preparing for a life-or-death battle and more like a lawless bandit market. I've seen more tactical coordination at a suburban garage sale. Suppressing his disgust, Paul ordered his adjutant to lead the main force to their designated camp. He entered the city with a small elite guard. The interior was worse. Streets were littered with debris and sewage, and the citizens were either long gone or barricaded inside. Low-ranking officers stumbled out of taverns, arms draped over one another. They were drunk, mocking and striking the few cowering civilians they encountered. Paul sighed. There was no discipline here. He had expected this. Most Federation troops had spent their time occupying western border cities acting like petty tyrants. They had devolved from an organized army into looting, pleasure-seeking brigands. Even in Storm City, where he had exerted great effort to maintain order, he could barely curb the rot, only managing to keep his core troops combat-ready. Could this rabble, despite their numbers, truly be fractured and undisciplined, conquer the impregnable fortress of Thorn City? Paul was deeply doubtful. He knew their previous victory at Storm City had relied on internal betrayal and outside help. This time, there were no insiders. They faced a well-defended fortress with home field advantage. But he had no choice. The Federation was in chaos, and retreat was impossible. This window of power transition was their only and final opportunity. Though he suspected they were being used as spears to test the western border's strength, he had to seize the chance. It was a desperate gamble. If they could take, or even severely shake Thorn City, it would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction within the Orlando Kingdom. With a child monarch, a regent duke, and ambitious rivals, the kingdom might collapse from within. Then, the Western Federation, driven by shared interests, might set aside their differences to unite and conquer this wealthy land. Paul's eyes hardened. They needed a swift victory. He signaled his guards to disperse the drunken officers causing trouble in the street. Teach them a lesson, but no killing. Paul rode toward the Lord's castle. A noble leaning against the gate chatted idly with his companions. Seeing Paul, his eyes lit up, and he shouted toward the interior. Quiet, everyone. Our great leader, Lord Paul Botticelli, has finally arrived. The noise inside died down. A dozen figures emerged, wearing fake smiles. Lord Paul, we've been waiting for you to take charge. Paul dismounted, offering a thin smile. The logistics of moving such a large force took time. My apologies. Newell, the host, a middle-aged man with shifty eyes, stepped forward. Of course, your responsibilities are heavy. Please, come in. Everyone is waiting for your command. Paul nodded, counting the faces and frowning slightly. He suppressed his irritation and entered the hall. A long table was set up. Paul took the head seat. Where are General Amon and Sir Loka? Why are they absent? Amon represented the Marshal Hovgard Federation, and Loka held another key outpost. A massive man in a horned helmet stood up from the lower end. He scratched his helmet awkwardly before speaking in a gruff voice. Lord Paul, General Amon. He fell suddenly ill and cannot attend. So, I, Boulder Sesson, represent Hovgard and lead the Kyle City troops here. Paul stared at him. How many men? Sesson's voice dropped. About 1,000. Paul felt a surge of anger. Hovgard was acting independently again. He doubted Amon's illness but nodded expressionlessly, signaling Sesson to sit. A noble from the Valeria estate on Paul's left sneered. Typical Hovgard savages, no sense of contract. Useless when it counts. Sesson glared, his fists clenching, but he restrained himself. He let out a heavy snort and turned away. Newell intervened. Lord Paul, everyone please. Let's focus on the big picture. We've finally gathered here. We share a goal. Let's not ruin it over trifles. Paul raised a hand to silence them. Enough. We know our predicament from previous meetings. We have no retreat and no reinforcements. We must rely on ourselves. Unity is our only hope for survival and victory. He paused, his tone sharpening. I expect no repeat of this behavior. Any betrayal of our contract or cowardice will be treated as treason against the Federation. Most nobles nodded, at least on the surface. Now, Paul said, report your actual troop numbers so I can finalize the deployment. The meeting began in earnest. A noble from the small city-state of Grant stood up and announced, Grant will provide 500 troops. Representatives from other small city-states followed suit. Most pledged between 500 and 600 soldiers, the maximum they could spare from their outposts. Larger city-states followed. Valeria offered 1,200, Mysoja 1,300, and 3 others pledged around 1,000 each. Paul calculated the total. His own 3,000, Hovgard's 1,000, and the others brought the force to roughly 12,000. While below his optimistic target, it was sufficient for a serious siege if utilized with speed and surprise. Paul nodded, his expression encouraging. Good. Despite minor setbacks, we have gathered a force capable of shaking the West. This is a heaven-sent opportunity born from the chaos within Orlando. We must unite to seize it. He stood, leaning over the table to scan the room with burning intensity. I promise that after Thorn City falls, all wealth, supplies, and even the population. I suppose it's nice to know exactly how much I'm worth to these people, even if the answer is not much. Will be distributed strictly according to each state's troop contribution. Wanlu will not take a single extra share. This sparked the greed and enthusiasm of the gathered nobles. Well said, Lord Paul. We've taken Storm City before. What's Thorn? The Westerners are weak. The hall erupted in ambitious laughter, treating Thorn City as already conquered. Paul sneered internally at his profit-driven allies and raised a hand to silence them. Save the excitement for the victory banquet. We must discuss the siege plan and assignments immediately. The plan: we march at dawn tomorrow. Target: Thorn City. Yes, Lord Paul. The crowd roared in unison, fueled by greed and war fever. 2 days passed, marking Thorn City's transition from peace to wartime footing. The atmosphere grew tense. Patrols doubled, their movements hurried and heavy. Markets remained open, but the merchants' cries were muted. Citizens instinctively sensed the danger and rushed to stockpile essentials. An invisible, oppressive weight hung in the air, the hallmark of an impending battle. During these 2 days, the LaRoche vassals received the emergency summons. They arrived from surrounding fiefs with their finest troops, flowing into the designated camps like streams into a river. The sounds of war, neighing horses, clashing armor, and shouting officers, replaced the city's usual bustle. After settling their troops, the vassals hurried to the seat of power, LaRoche Fortress. They needed to meet Sir Lucius to understand the situation and receive orders. Over a dozen nobles waited at the fortress gates. Unbeknownst to them, Lucius was at a heavily guarded military camp in the suburbs, reviewing a map of Thorn with Count Quintus, and Baron Ron. Quintus pointed to the city's 6 gates. It's always comforting to see people so eager to wait in the wrong place. The main gate, Lion Gate, has the thickest walls and a perfect barbican. It is impenetrable. The Federation rabble is unlikely to attempt a frontal assault there. He pointed to the Riverside Gate. It's bordered by a tributary of the Whitewater River, which limits troop deployment and prevents heavy siege equipment from approaching. He moved to the next. The Forest Gate is surrounded by uneven, wooded terrain, making it difficult for the attackers to maneuver. That leaves the Iron, Kings, and Dragon Gates. The terrain there is flat and open, ideal for staging. In my experience, these will be their primary targets. Predicting the enemy's main thrust allowed for targeted defense. It prevented the waste of limited forces across too many fronts. Lucius nodded, acknowledging the tactical advantage. Count Quintus is correct. The Iron, Kings, and Dragon Gates are our priorities. He paused, deep in thought. Count, what is our current standing garrison? Quintus replied, we have about 5,000 regular soldiers currently in the city. The lords responding to your summons are arriving now. While the Duke took the main western force, we still have reinforcements. With the vassals' troops and local mercenaries, we can muster nearly 10,000 defenders. Lucius repeated the number, then turned to me. Eli, does your intelligence indicate the size of the coalition army? I shook my head apologetically. I apologize, Lord Lucius. I could not confirm their exact numbers. My intelligence hadn't provided such granular military statistics. Lucius wasn't surprised. Intelligence was rarely perfect, and my crystal ball was currently in the shop. No matter. If they dare target Thorn, they likely have at least 10,000 men. Baron Ron, standing nearby, offered his thoughts. Lord Lucius, have no fear. Even if they match our numbers, they are a tired force from a long march. We hold the walls and wait for them to exhaust themselves. We will win. A messenger interrupted from outside the tent. Lord Lucius, Count Hanad, Count Punch, and others have arrived at the fortress and request an immediate council. Lucius nodded, then turned to Quintus. Count, since the vassals have arrived, let us return to La Roche Fortress to coordinate our defense. Yes, Lord Lucius. The group departed the camp, racing back to the city on horseback. Upon reaching the fortress, they found over a dozen Western nobles gathered. Their attire varied, but their family crests displayed their long lineages and status in the West. The chatter ceased as Lucius appeared. They rushed forward, voices laced with anxiety. Sir Lucius, has something happened? Is this emergency summons due to the royal capital? One count asked, fearing the worst. Lucius scanned his vassals calmly. Follow me, everyone. Sensing the gravity of his tone, they suppressed their questions and followed him into a grand council chamber. The room was shadowed by a high dome, with portraits of past La Roche members watching from the walls. The nobles took their seats by rank. Count Hanad, a veteran known for his martial prowess, stood up impatiently. Lord Lucius, why have you summoned us so urgently? Has something happened to the Duke at the royal capital? This was everyone's greatest fear. If Federico fell, the West would face an unprecedented crisis. It's comforting to know that even nobles can agree on something, provided that something is impending doom. Lucius didn't answer directly, instead signaling to Count Quintus. Quintus stood up. My lords, please be quiet. A major crisis has occurred. We have confirmed intelligence that the Federation remnants gathered near Storm City have secretly mobilized. They intend to storm Thorn City. The room erupted in shock. Is this true, Count Quintus? The Duke and 3 Marquises are at the royal capital, and the others are too far to reinforce us. Quintus's words left the council chamber in a state of stunned silence. Disbelief and panic rippled through the nobles. The news was far beyond their expectations. They couldn't fathom the Federation attacking the West's strongest fortress. Enough! Lucius's voice cut through the noise. Lucius stood, his gaze sweeping the room. The war of vengeance has begun early. We have no retreat. Behind Thorn City lies your lands, your families, and your foundations. There is only one requirement for this battle, he stated firmly. Victory. His words hit the nobles like a hammer. A heavy sense of duty replaced their shock. Yes, Lord Lucius, they pledged in unison, setting aside internal grievances to defend their home. Count Punch, a close ally of the La Roche family, stood up. Lord Lucius, we have brought nearly 4,000 elite soldiers. We await your command. Agreed. Let them never return. The others echoed, their fighting spirit ignited. Despite their varying motives, they were now united under Lucius's authority. Lucius noted their resolve with a cold glint in his eyes. Very well. Let us assign battle stations. At the end of the table, I and Ron sat quietly. As a new baron and a young relative of Marquis Marcus, we lacked the status of the veteran lords. We were sidelined in this high-level military meeting, which was honestly a relief since I didn't have to pretend to care about their tax disputes. I remained calm, ignoring the dismissive glances of the older nobles. Ron, however, bit his lip, desperate for respect. We exchanged a look, sharing a silent understanding. We knew this war was a reckoning for Lucius and the West. For us, it was a chance to prove our worth and enter the stage of power. Orders were issued clearly. Count Quintus, Lucius commanded. Take 2,500 men to defend the Dragon Gate. Baron Pendragon, Baron Ron. I and Ron stood immediately. You two will assist Count Quintus. Secure the Dragon Gate. Yes, Lord Lucius. Lucius turned to the veteran Count Hanad. I trust your valor. You shall also have 2,500 men. Viscount Will and Viscountess Catherine. You will assist Count Hanad at the Iron Gate. The trio accepted their orders with a firm salute. Count Punch, take 2,500 men to the King's Gate, assisted by Viscount Roland and Viscount Gareth. Other nobles were assigned to the smaller Forest and Riverside Gates. I will hold the Lion Gate with the remaining forces, Lucius concluded. He then turned to an elderly, stooped count at the end of the table. Count Habii, Lucius said, his tone softening. Your loyalty is remembered. Internal order is vital. I charge you with recruiting mercenaries and wandering knights to form a patrol squad. Maintain order and suppress any unrest. We cannot afford internal failure. Count Habii stood shakily. Yes, Lord Lucius. I shall not fail. Lucius scanned the room. The orders are clear. Proceed to your designated sectors. If you lack the required troops, report to me for a requisition order to draw from the suburban camp. Remember, we must win. There is no other choice. If anyone defies orders or deserts, the fate of Count Aldous awaits you. Meeting adjourned. The mention of the disgraced Aldous family sent a chill through the room. For the Golden Lion LaRoche, they shouted. They rushed to collect their orders. Soon, only Lucius, Quintus, Habii, I, and Ron remained. Habii struggled to rise, presumably waiting for his joints to finish their negotiations. Lucius stepped forward to assist the loyal elder. Your loyalty is admirable, Count Habii, Lucius said. Quintus teased the old man affectionately. Old Habii, why are you here yourself instead of sending your kin? I stepped forward to help steady the aging count. Habii offered me a grateful, weary smile. Lord Lucius, Quintus, I will be honest. My greatest regret was not following the Duke to the capital years ago. So I had to come. But I am old and lack the energy for recruitment. May I ask for these two young barons to assist me? Once the patrol is formed, they will return to the Dragon Gate. Lucius studied Habii's sincere eyes. The request was reasonable and offered the youths a chance to prove themselves. Very well. Lucius made his decision. I, Ron, assist Count Habii with the recruitment and reorganization.